Welcome everybody to the February 6th, 2018 Board of Commission meetings. Please silence your cell phones or any electronic devices and pagers. Agendas are located at the back of the room for your review. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Next on the agenda is a moment of silence and reflection done by Ms. Deb Hadcock.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is review and approval of the agenda. Is there any changes? Recognize Ron.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just adjusting my mic. But I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made by Ron and seconded by Hadcock to approve the agenda. Any discussion for public or private? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. I recognize Holly.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. For public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the Board. Items are removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today's consent agenda contains the following items. Number 5 is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of January 16th, 2018. Number 6 is approval to declare the AutoMark assisting ballot marking devices a surplus and used for trade as submitted by the Auditor's Office. Number 7 is to schedule public hearings at 9:15 a.m. on February 20th, 2018 for the following budget supplements. First one is SB 18-001 for the General Fund John T. Vakurovich budget. Second one is SP 18-002 for the General Fund State's Attorney's budget. Item C is SP 18-003 for the MacArthur Fund State's Attorney's Office and Sheriff budgets. And the fourth one is SP 18-004 for the Accumulated Building Fund James Kerstead Event Center Addition budget. Number 8 is to appoint Ms. Dallas Voss to the 2018 Extension Advisory Board. Number 9 is approval of the permit to occupy the right-of-way and the request for road closure traffic control for the 2018 Deadwood Mickelson Trail Marathon as submitted by Ms. Emily Wheeler. Number 10 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle for Team Ellsworth Spouses Club. And number 11 is to acknowledge the notice of intent to conduct a raffle for the Run for Rule.
Thank you, Ms. Holly. This is the consent agenda. Is there any citizen from the public that would like to have anything pulled from the consent agenda?
I would like to pull number 6, Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor.
We have item 6. Anybody from the board that'd like an item pulled from the consent agenda?
Number 5.
Anybody else? With 5 and 6 pulled, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Go ahead, Mark.
Moved by DeSanto,
Second.
seconded by Hadcock to approve the consent agenda 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We'll go back to item number 5. Mr. Farabee.
The minutes are incorrect, so I'll be voting no.
Move approval of number 5. The minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve the minutes by Hadcock, seconded by Ron Muscard. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So we have 2 noes from Farabee and DeSanto and approval from Ron Lloyd and Deb. Item number 6. Julie Pierce.
Good morning, Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor. I would like to just offer a little bit more information to the board on the request to declare the auto marks surplus and to use for trade-in. Attached to the request was the inventory of the auto marks that were purchased with federal HAVA money, and these are antiquated, and we will be trading them in on new ballot marking devices that are used largely by the disability community but can be used by anybody. These can't be sold because they're election ballot marking devices. That's why we're needing to trade them in. The purchases of the express votes, which is the replacement equipment, costs, each one of those costs $3,210 plus cases and other things that paraphernalia, computer equipment that need to go with them, and firmware licenses. The purchase of these replacement will also be coming from federal HAVA dollars that were deposited back after the 2000 election, which with this as the purchase of electronic poll books, we will be using that balance up, clearing up our reserve and that we have for election equipment and our budget that we have in 2018 for the electronic poll books. Just thought the board should be aware of why we're doing that. The equipment that we're buying is approved by the state, and it's the only replacement piece of equipment that we can use for ballot marking. There's no storage of votes on these. It's just a different marking device that's been certified through the state. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Thanks, Julie. Is there any questions from the board? Mr. Farabee, I'll recognize you.
I'd like to point out that it was about $250,000 worth of voting equipment. It's what, 10, 11 years old.
Probably over.
Follow?
Roughly $250,000 for voting equipment.
Mm-hmm. Federal government requires that we have some type of assistance device for those people with disabilities.
Any further discussion from the board? Any from the citizens?
Move approval order number 6.
Motion's been made by Hadcock, seconded by Buskerud. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I hate to give that a choice.
Item number 12, items from weed and pest. Recognize Scott Governor.
Morning, Commissioners. For you is a request for a letter or resolutions supporting the Black Hills Resilient Forest Strategy. This is kind of a follow-up to the Black Hills Mountain Pine Beetle Strategy. Now that the most recent pine beetle epidemic is over, trying to continue to build on that cooperation that was built during the recent epidemic between the various agencies, forest products industry, and private landowners to try to take steps now so the next epidemic, when we have it, won't be as severe. It's not if, it's when. It's pine beetles, native pest, it'll be here again in epidemic form, but if we can continue to stay ahead and do forest management practices, we can make a less severe impact in the future.
Thanks, Scott. After doing some review, I think you're absolutely right. They say it's not been cured. It's just in dormant for another 10 years or something. It could come back. And so
And there's other other threats that have sprung up since that epidemic. Obviously, the fuel loading with all the dead trees and the vegetation growing back now. We have elevated fire fuels out there, and then also with that open canopy brings in a lot more invasive weed species. So there's continual threats that are at threat of the Black Hills. So this will address a lot of that and
Yes.
make sure that we're working together as a group.
I just want to take time to thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion from the board? Ms. Hadcock?
Mr. Guffey, we still have this under weed and pest, but could you tell people kind of what you do? Because people watch, this on video, and they might not know what resilient, making the forest resilient means to you and to the Forest Service, and just a kind of briefing of what that means, of what you do and how you're going to make the forest resilient.
Sure. So some of the things that we're doing at the county level, we have an agreement with the Forest Service, our stewardship agreement, which we're creating field breaks along our county right-of-ways. We're continuing to work on that. We got one project in place on Audubon Mountain Road. The next one we're looking at is Shared Mike Road, working with State Wildland Fire and Forest Service to create a field break along that road as well, and some work up along Norris Peak Road. But we're continuing to work with both state and federal on those field breaks. That's one thing that is kind of the goal out of this, is create a field breaks map of the whole hills, where those strategic areas are. So when a fire breaks out, it's not as severe as it could be. So.
Your department sprays for noxious weeds?
Yep, we have agreements with Forest Service to work with them to spray invasive weeds and to hopefully minimize the impacts on that, and using biocontrol agents as well, and various ways to impact that as well.
I've seen your work, and I've came to your meetings, and you have a good group of people, very hardworking, and we appreciate everything you do. I just thought we needed to have the public know everything that you do, Mr. Guffey, because you're pretty amazing at the things you get done and how hard you work for Pennington County, so we thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board?
Move approval of number 12.
Motion's been made. Second. Seconded by DeSanto for approval of the resolution. Any discussion from citizens? We have one.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Scott.
I need you to recognize yourself first.
Oh, Dan Richer.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank Scott. At one time, for over a year, my property was 0.0 for the bugs, and Scott went around all the property in the area and marked the trees that were out in the Forest Service for us, so we would know which trees to take down. And I think he saved a lot of my timber by doing that. And I just want to thank him publicly for it. I've thanked him in private, but I'd like to thank him publicly for that.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. That's good to hear that from the public.
Yeah, and that was another agreement we had with the Forest Service. They allowed us to do 300-foot buffers next to private lands. So as a private landowner was battling on their own land, we could go on the Forest Service and got that 300-foot buffer next to private lands to minimize that impact. So
Well, that's great.
another example of good cooperation between county and federal government there.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor for approval of the resolution. No further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I think, Carrie, did you get that? It was approved by Hadcock, DeSanto? Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda item is item 13, items from auditor. Ms.
Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor. I have before you an application for an on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license for Black Hills Speedway as the business name, owner name, Cross Country Real Estate. Fees have been paid. Application is attached.
Move for approval.
Moved by DeSanto for approval.
Second.
seconded by Hadcock for approval. Any discussion from citizens? Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 15, items from equalization.
14.
Oh, sorry. Item 14,
You're okay.
skipped you.
You're skipped, Mike.
Buildings and grounds, Mike. Cool.
Good morning. Mike Cool with Pennington County Buildings and Grounds. I'm here today requesting authorization to sign documents relative to rezoning the Pennington County campus to a public district. This has developed kind of in association with the downtown master planning work that's been going on, and the urban commercial district that's developed out of that, that's the city is currently beginning to move forward on implementing. Our consultants and the city and us have sat down and discussed the merits of the new urban district, and the feeling generally with everybody is that a public district is better suited for Pennington County going forward. So we're looking at implementing that in association with the current jail expansion and remodel project. That will also require a major amendment down the road to an existing plan development that's in place on part of our property, and so I'd be seeking authorization to sign any applications relevant to that project and in these land use issues.
So Mike, can you tell us, the board and the public, how long that the city had been working on doing this rezoning?
The city is, the rezone has probably been in process for more than a year itself in working through developing this new commercial, urban commercial district. And we have been a part of that, a lot of those discussions as well. And generally from the perspective of Pennington County, a lot of things that are being implemented through that are favorable to Pennington County and desirable things that we want to see. Generally, it's this new district is going to allow everybody to build out to lot lines where there's typically a 25-foot setback now. Our expectation is that though desirable, and this is something that we're going to be implementing with the current project, we have a portion of the project that needs to be built out to a lot line, generally to preserve the character of our campus and separate it from the downtown. We believe that having setbacks is something that we want to try and maintain. And basically we often talk about it in terms of the green ring of vegetation, landscaping and stuff around it that gives it kind of a campus feel overall. But things like reduction in parking requirements and stuff are all viewed as favorable that are being implemented through this downtown district that's being implemented right now.
Thank you, Mike. Does the board have any questions or discussions? Ms. Hadcock?
So this sign the application on behalf of Pennington County on jail expansion and remodel projects is on land use. This is basically a land use.
Well,
you're talking about.
This is something I'm trying to work through a little bit with the state's attorney's office in terms of how to phrase some of these requests. Authorities. I mean, we often have like stormwater permits that have to be authorized, things like this, and how do I request authorization to have that without coming back to you every time for a permit or something that needs to be signed? So
I guess what I'm asking, Mike, is that this is just for basically land use. You're going to rezone county campus into a public
district.
And that's all this side of the road, not the
This
restoration
would be
yet?
between Kansas City and St. Joe are 3 blocks, blocks 97, 98, and 99. And we've already rezoned Block 107, which has the county health facility
Okay.
project that's currently on it. That one has already been rezoned public district.
And so they did go ahead and put it in public district, like they have the Civic Center and some other stuff?
We did. We were hoping as the urban commercial district was developing, not knowing where that was going to end up. That was the best fit at the time, and that's where how we chose to zone it. In the end, it appears that public district is still the best fit for Pennington County facilities.
I guess what it says on here is to sign applications on behalf of Pennington County related. So the applications, you mean, are not for construction project, it's just for land use?
Land use issues relative to the zoning and the plan development.
Okay. And I'm in agreement with this because we'd like to do this with the fairgrounds as well and put it as public because they have the Civic Center and some other things because we're unique in the sense that a jail and some of the entities that we have in Pennington County don't have the same amount for parking. Like you might have 50 people in the jail, but you shouldn't have 2 parking spots for every person. Does that make sense? So actually, we've been talking about this for maybe 3 years, and now it's come to pass. And thank you for your work on this because it makes a huge difference when you're going through the process through the city to make sure that it is public use and not the same as PUCs, which is
There'll be further probably things that we have to do down the road
Right.
relative to this to
Define it.
protect Pennington County
Yes.
use of our property and stuff. This is just one step in that process.
Yes, sir. And I agree with it because it's a good process to start and move forward with. And then again, maybe we could move next, see if the fairgrounds can move forward on putting them part of the county campus. So thank you, Mike.
Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Mr. DeSanto.
When going through this, Mike, I just noticed that each one of these different parcels they show 0 land value. Could you explain that to me? Is that just because it's not applicable to what we're talking about right now, that there's no land value on it?
Well, it's not taxable property. I guess
Government.
relative to these documents, I'd actually ask somebody from Equalization probably speak more
Okay.
About that. But my understanding is that there's no value associated with it because it is a government property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any further discussion from the board?
Move approval.
Moved by Hadcock,
Second.
seconded by Ron Buskerud. Any further discussion from citizens or the board? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Now to item 15 from Equalization.
This
Good
could
morning.
take a while. Just kidding.
It shouldn't. Shannon Rittberger, Director of Equalization. You have several abatement requests in front of you. They're all brought to you by my office. I can explain the 2 types of abatement requests that you have here. There's 2 of them where the city of Rapid City purchased a property and it's exempt for that part of the year that the city owns it. And then the other 3 are the same thing that I introduced last week. I explained that we had found a problem in our tax software process when a deed transfers ownership multiple times on the same day. This is just more of those. Last meeting, it was the ones that didn't have to go to a city for approval before they came here. I think these come from Rapid City, and I think there's one more from Box Elder that's yet to be brought here.
Anything else, Shannon?
Nope.
Any discussion from citizens?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Ron Busker to approve, seconded by Hadcock. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we come to items from the Highway Department. Tom.
Good morning, Tom Wilsey, Pennington County Highway Department. Highway Department is requesting authorization to purchase three-quarter ton Ford pickups from Lamb Motor Company off the South Dakota State bid. We're purchasing crew cab pickups with 3 highlighted accessories, which we included in the packet. Those accessories for the public to know are a locking differential axles, factory installed 110 volt converter, and upgrading our tires to all-terrain mud and snow. Cost for these pickups will be $31,316 each for a total of $93,948.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved by Hadcock, seconded for approval. Discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanto.
I did a little figuring last night, and the difference between the 6.2 liter V8 and the 6.7 diesel is about 7 miles to the gallon is what they get in mileage difference. And I'm wondering, Tom, if maybe, I talked to the board about it, obviously, but I added that up. These previous trucks that we're trading in have 149,000 miles on them, somewhere right in there, kind of average. And over that period of time, we would save $14,600 in fuel costs per vehicle using a diesel motor instead of a gas, based on a 7 mile to the gallon difference and the current 73-cent difference in fuel cost for between diesel and gas. What's your thought on that?
We didn't push for the diesels because honestly didn't think it would be approved. It was the almost $10,000 cost more for the diesel.
So it'd save you about $4,000 in the end if you paid $10,000.
In the end.
$4,000 per vehicle. But plus the other question I have is, aren't the diesels, wouldn't they take less maintenance?
I can't say that. I would have to ask my maintenance foreman. I can't say for sure if they take more or less maintenance. He's the only one that would be able to answer that one. I'm sorry.
I'd like to hear the opinion of the board on this, because I think it's I know we're spending more money up front, but.
Because it comes to, well, with the 6.7 diesel and the regeneration level depth, we're talking another $9,920, $9,920 more
Per unit?
per unit.
Chairman.
But
So
it would
tell,
save-
sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you
No,
done?
go ahead.
Ms. Hadcock.
So, Tom, tell me why you wouldn't do diesel or why you don't have a problem with diesel.
I don't have a problem with diesels.
Okay.
They'd be good on the lower end. They have more power on the low end. I like that. But I have no problem. I just mainly figured an extra $9,800. I can cover it with my budget, but I figured I would ask for the gas first.
And these vehicles last, how many years usually do you have the vehicles?
Well, the ones that we were replacing for 97, 96, and 2000.
There you go. So it will be a cost savings then.
It would be a cost saving over the life of the vehicle, yes.
Okay.
And I guess what I'm asking is. Chair?
Good job, Floyd. Keep them in line over
No,
there.
you're good.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is it seems to me that these diesels, the newer diesels, are just outlasting. I mean, rather than trading it in 17 years at 149,000, we might be able to run a diesel for 250,000 if the truck's still in one piece. I guess that's my thought process. That's why I'm bringing it forward, because I want to hear what the rest of your opinions are.
So what's your motion?
I would like to make one comment about this, please. I can tell you the 2 3/4 tons that we're trading in, it's not the motor that's the problem. It's the body and the rest of the truck.
I'm going to make a comment on this. I went to school for diesel mechanics. So I know a little bit about them. The maintenance on diesels is a little higher. I mean, when you start getting into injectors and glow plugs and the cost to do a repair on them, it is quite a bit higher. I don't know if you have a diesel mechanic on staff. I'm sure he does some of the basic works and so forth. But, and then come wintertime, you have some more problems in the wintertime with the diesels than you do with the gas. So I guess it's, to me, from my point of view, Tom, it'd be what's the preference of the workers, of what works best for them. Because
I will say that my maintenance foreman is the one that recommended this to me.
okay,
The guy, the equipment maintenance foreman is the one that recommended this to me.
Okay.
I'm going by his recommendation.
Any further discussion? Good point, though. I mean, it's good discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanto.
I know that normally I'm not asking to spend more money. This time it just actually made sense.
Okay. With no further discussion, the motion on the floor is for approval by Deb Hadcock and Mr. Ron Buskerud. Any further discussion?
Make a substitute motion.
Mr. Farabee.
Continue this until that next meeting, until the shop foreman weighs in, and I just happen to know that you have a mechanic on your staff.
Yeah, that's the one that recommended these to me. Was him.
And a motion to continue to bring staff foreman to the meeting to give us
To bring us more knowledge, bring us more information.
Second for discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded for discussion. Discussion on the motion.
Mr.
Substitute
Chair.
motion, Mr. DeSanto. Oh, sorry. Let me go to Ron. He hasn't spoken yet.
Are these bids that you've gotten still good? They'll be good for a couple more weeks?
This is a state bid. So yeah, it's good until March.
And there's no major big hurry?
There's no big rush, no, not right now.
Okay, now, he was, Mr. DeSanto.
Tom, would it be prudent to do a little additional?
I can talk with
Research?
my shop foreman and talk
Great.
about this, because to be honest, I didn't think you would approve being diesel.
Sometimes we think ahead.
Okay. Ms. Hadcock.
I just heard him say he did talk to his foreman, and this is what he recommended. But maybe he's saying that if he says you can spend 10,000 more on diesel and then come
Or
back, then
maybe I'll come back and say we want two of them to be diesel, not one gas. It'll give me, yeah.
okay. So you're okay with
Since you guys
continuance?
are showing some interest in the diesel, I'm willing to pursue this a little more.
Okay. I'm going to ask for a little bit of clarification on the motion, because I was kind of hearing, bring the shop foreman in here, that's what I initially heard, and then I heard it just bring back information, so I'd look at Mr. Farabee to clarify his motion.
I moved we continue this until next meeting for more information, period.
Period.
Okay.
Okay, that's more clarification than I needed. Okay. Motion is to continue to bring it back to the next meeting with some more information.
You bet. I will do that.
We have to have a second. No one seconded
Oh,
that.
DeSanto second.
Oh, you did?
Sorry.
Okay.
Motion,
Sorry
that
about that.
substitute motion was made by Farabee and seconded by DeSanto.
All in favor?
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Number 17 is a petition to declaratory ruling for the SDDNR Water Management Board for RSD 74.5301.04, existing on-site wastewater systems, Mr. Dan Richer. I'll recognize Mr. Dan Richer.
Hi, Dan Richer. My main reason for coming up here is to give you guys a heads up that this is coming. Your next meeting is on the 20th, which would give you about 4 working days to get a response, if you want to respond on it. So I thought it'd be just fair enough to give you guys some time to work on it, decide what you'd like to do. Obviously, I'd like you to take a neutral position, but I guess that's you guys. I'm up here for questions. if you have any.
I got one. Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Ms. Deb Hadcock.
So, Dan, what is different than in 2016 when this went to the state and the Supreme Court that opposed this? What
Went
do
to the
you do?
Supreme Court in 2016?
Well, that's what I heard. It went to the state with George and then the Supreme Court on this. And then that the Municipal League and the South Dakota County Commissioners both opposed this.
Well,
Is it different than what was brought before?
well, I don't know about the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court has said several times that statutes say what they say.
Okay.
Period. And that's what I'm trying to find out is just, this is not, I know they made me put in the paper that this is an adversary. Who's the adversary? All I'm asking for is a yes or no question. That's all I'm asking for.
No, I'm just asking Mr. Richer if
Yeah, I
if
understand
this is
that, but-
different than it was last time.
It is for me, yeah.
So
Because
it's the
I
same.
consider this government overreach.
So you're just bringing it, George brought it up and now you want to bring it up different? Or same thing just to see if they say something different to you?
No, I put in my explanation to them that I'm concerned with government overreach on this.
Okay, so it's the same thing.
This is not a general question. This is a question of, is this government overreach based on this regulation or based on this statute, or is it not?
So in
Just
2016.
a little clarification. This is coming from Dan.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's what I'm saying.
I just wanted to clarify that.
But it was brought up before and this
Yeah.
didn't, Commissioner Busker, didn't we vote on this before in 2016?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I think we need the state's attorney's office to look at it because it is a lot more complicated than Mr. Richter is making it out to be. It's against our ordinances on polluting water that we use for drinking water, partly in Rapid City. So I think we need to oppose it, frankly, but I do need the state's attorney's opinion on whether we should or not.
I think we're going to let Michelle, I think you're asking for some clarification from Michelle, State's Attorney, Ron?
Yeah, she looks like she's been prepared for this.
Yes. Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. To first answer Commissioner Hadcock's question, the petition for declaratory ruling is quite similar to the petition that was previously filed by Commissioner Farabee. However, the question submitted by Commissioner Farabee was not decided upon its merits because there was a failure to submit a factual basis. That decision by the Water Board was appealed to the Circuit Court and ultimately the Supreme Court, and Mr. Farabee's appeals were denied. With that being said, I agree with Commissioner Busker. This is much more complicated than a petition or a request for a ruling from the Water Board to say that the regulation says exactly what it says. The regulation does say that systems in existence prior to 1975 are not subject to this chapter. All that means is that systems in existence prior to 1975 are not regulated under the administrative rules of South Dakota. It has nothing to do with the ability of a local government to regulate septic systems. However, in Mr. Richer's request for declaratory ruling, he adds, if I were to acquire a property with a pre-1975 septic system, could any unit of local government in South Dakota require me to bring such system up to current standards? It's really kind of a different issue than the declaratory ruling that Mr. Richer is requesting. And my concern and the state's attorney's office concern is that the end game is really to take perhaps a ruling that says the regulation says exactly what it says and argue that local government does not have authority to regulate septic systems. And that is not the case. In fact, Secretary Perner, Secretary of Department of Environment and Natural Resources, has previously opined that or stated that he is unaware of any law that would prohibit local governments from adopting its own requirements for the design, construction, or operation of septic systems within its jurisdiction, as several have done for many years. He further opined that while any ordinance adopted by a county may not be less stringent than a state requirement, the legislature has given broad authority to local governments in making land use decisions through their respective planning and zoning ordinances. With that being said, I think it is of important public interest to protect our water resources. And with that being said, I would ask the commission today to authorize the state's attorney's office to file a petition in response to Mr. Richards' petition for declaratory ruling.
Thank you, Michelle. Dan, did you have any follow-up?
Well, I don't think I attacked the ordinance other than to say that I believe it's government overreach. And I'd like a declaratory ruling on if I bought property with pre-75, does it say it's exempt or does it not say it's exempt? That's the question. And I also put in there that most privies that I've seen in 25 years running around in the hills is they're either used as a yard ornament or a conversation piece. I mean, I haven't seen an active privy yet, but this county is running around taking privies down, and then, like I said, most of them are just conversation pieces or yard ornaments. And they're kind of cool when you drive by and you never see one, and there's one sitting there. So that was my question. And getting into the weeds, if there's more to it than a simple yes or no, well, then I say the statute's written wrong. Because any Joe Blow with a high school education should be able to read a statute and not have to get 4 lawyers to tell you what it says.
Thank you, Dan.
And that's where I'm at. And I just, like I said, I came up here to give you guys more than a 4-day warning on what was coming down. And I thought that was more than fair.
Thank you, Dan.
You're done.
This item was put on the agenda, so their action can be taken on this. What is the wish of this board?
I'm going to make a motion to have the state's attorney's office file a petition in opposition within the time frame.
Motion made by Ron Busker to authorize the attorney's office to file a petition of proposal. How do I word that? I didn't catch all that.
She said opposition.
Yeah, opposition.
What you said, Michelle.
It's motion to authorize the state's attorney's office to file a petition in opposition to Mr. Richards' petition.
Thank you, Michelle. That was motion by Ron Busker, seconded by Deb Hadcock. Any further discussion from citizens? Seeing none. Any from the board?
Mr. Chair,
I would recognize Mr. DeSanto.
I would make a substitute motion to continue so that I can give some more study to this. I'm reading it as though if it's pre-1975, it's exempt, period. That's the way I read it. But I would like to study it more. And
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. I would like to clarify for Commissioner DeSanto that the administrative rule that is being referenced only concerns whether pre-1975 septic systems are regulated by the state. Pennington County has its own ordinance that was enacted in August of, I believe, 2010. Our own ordinance does not require any septic system in Pennington County that existed prior to 2010 to be brought up to county specs or ordinances. That system, the use of that system is grandfathered in. That does not preclude regulations such as pumping and inspecting, because that's the only way we can ensure that the system is in fact operating. But so the administrative rules that Mr. Richer is addressing have nothing to do with Pennington County ordinance. In that sense, we don't require any citizen to to go in and dig out their septic system and replace it if it was in existence prior to 2010, unless it's not operating properly.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeSanto.
that's, so what you're saying is that prior to 2010, they're grandfathered?
Yes, in Pennington County, of course, there's certain exceptions, such as if it's the system is not operating properly, it's failing, wastewater might be surfacing. It's my understanding with existing systems, let's say it's a baffle. Say a baffle is broken. Pennington County does not require the owner to replace the entire system. They allow the homeowner to simply repair the baffle.
Okay. Okay, Mr.
Any
Chair.
further follow-up before she sits down again?
Not for her, for PJ.
PJ?
Yeah, I have a question for you, PJ. Since the ordinance was put into effect, how many, approximately percentage-wise, how many septics have already been inspected?
I don't know that answer.
You don't?
Nope, not off my head. Top of my
I'd like to
head.
find that out too, because I lean towards, obviously, less government and less inspections and less, especially with large landowners, and especially if it's not near a water source that we could be having a problem with. I'd like to find out basically how many are left that we haven't seen already. If we've already inspected them and looked at them, I've owned 5 different homes with 5 different septic systems, and one of them as old as that was put in 1912, and with proper maintenance, never had a problem with any of them. And so I feel Dan's concerned that we're overreaching, and if we've already gone out and inspected everything already, or for the most part, why do we need to continue to inspect over and over and over again and charge our constituents permit fees and everything else to get these inspections done? Just my thought.
Thank you, Mr. DeSanto.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
I agree. We have already, this is just page 2 of the same ongoing situation that you talked about saving taxpayers' money. We've spent more taxpayers' money on stupid things like this than I can imagine, and now we're going to go through another hearings and more attorneys for absolutely, I think, one case that I know of. So it's talk about a waste of money. You're looking at it.
Okay, I want to say something. First of all, I want to, Mr. Farabee, in the spirit of transparency, do you have a conflict of interest in voting on this?
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. So there was a motion to continue with no second.
Right.
I'll second that.
So there's been a motion to continue and seconded by Farabee. Motion by DeSanto, seconded by Farabee. Any further discussion? Mr. Farabee.
Before we vote, I've got a question for the state's attorney, or for that matter, anybody on the board. What are the grounds? What are the grounds for opposing a citizen of South Dakota applying or requesting the government to do what the government allows us to do? In other words, SDCL 126:15 says that we, the people, have a right to petition any agency of government for a declaratory ruling, period. So what are the grounds for opposing the citizen, in this case, Mr. Richer, from using the right given to him by the state legislature? What are the grounds?
The same administrative regulations, Commissioner Farabee. In fact, the notice of hearing that was sent to Mr. Richer specifically states that any person who wishes to participate in the hearing shall, by February 26th, file a written petition to oppose or support the declaratory ruling. And in this instance, the declaratory ruling that Mr. Richer seeks, I agree that the regulation says exactly what it says. However, the problem is Mr. Richer wishes to take administrative reg that only deals with the application of state regulations and somehow argue that Pennington County does not have the authority to regulate septic systems. And I would assert that it is in fact the responsibility of this governing body to assure that our valuable water resources are protected. And I would like to just add a personal note, with regards to inspecting septic systems. I myself I have a septic system within Pennington County. When I first had it pumped inspected, it was operating properly. The second time it was pumped inspected, I had a broken baffle, which was replaced. So the purpose of the regulation is to ensure that these older systems continue to operate properly so that we don't run the risk of contaminating our valuable water resources.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mr. Chair, my question was, what are the bases? What is the basis for the
I
petition?
think she answered it with that.
She didn't answer anything.
Yes, she did.
What are the basis for the opposition to a citizen exercising his rights? The legislature gave we, the people of South Dakota, the right to petition.
Correct. He has the right to the petition, but this governing body also has the right to protect valuable resources. We also stand as an entity, have the right to advocate what we believe is in the best interest of the people. So we're not denying Mr. Richer the opportunity to petition the board. We're simply asking you to authorize the state's attorney's office to present all information to the board so that they can make an educated decision.
Mr. Chair, once again,
She's answered it, that's enough.
what are the bases?
Yep, move on, move on.
Did twice. I'm going to recognize Mr. Richter.
First of all, I'm not attacking the septic system
No,
ordinance. I'm not. In fact, I pump every 3 years. I think that's just prudent. I got grandkids and more loads of wash go through that thing and you know what to do with. But, so I pump every 3 years. I have no problem with that 7-year pump schedule or with it. But the problem I have is by this commission's own words, the $20 fee is to pay for the inspector to come out and look at your stuff. By this commission's own words. I've been looking at the past videos on this thing. And yes, 3 of you weren't on it at the time, but no matter what, the commission did say it was to fund an inspector to come out and inspect my stuff. Well, unless you're living on 250 acres out in the middle of nowhere and your septic system starts to fail and it's actually surfacing, I guarantee you somebody's going to stop and ask you what you're doing. And if you tell them to get off your property, they're going to be calling Mr. Conover and tell him to get out there. I can tell you that for a fact.
thank you.
So I don't know where we've gotten into the weeds over this thing. All I'm asking.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Is this government overreach or not?
Thank you, Dan. Chair recognizes Ms. Hadcock.
On the declaratory ruling, Mr. Richer, I don't think anybody is opposed to you or any other citizen going and asking questions. In this case, the question, if I were to acquire property with pre-1976 septic system, could any unit of local government, South Dakota, require me to bring such system up to current standards? Basically, you're involving the county because we'd be the current standards and bringing that up properly. And that's why I think the petition from Michelle is good, because I think it should operate properly, and it also, again, is to protect water sources. I don't know if I always agreed with the $20 fee. I'll have to agree with you, but on this, you're asking the question that basically is saying, is the current standards have to be us, the county, if you have to follow those rules and regs?
Well,
Mr. Richter.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad this is on tape because the state's attorney said that anything prior to 2010 is exempt from county ordinance.
Not what she said.
Yeah.
Nope.
What'd she
That's
say?
not what she said,
Look, what'd you say then? 'Cause that's what I heard.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rombusker.
The ones that were before then can operate, but I don't mean that they're exempt from all county ordinances.
What?
Have to be
They're-
inspected.
they
That's not what
we
I
can
said.
regulate them, Dan.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
And I don't have a problem with it.
Now, yeah, you do. What it says in here is you don't want them to. You don't want us to. That's what it says. That's what you're asking for.
No, I'm not. I
Well,
told
you
you.
put it in there. I guess you're asking for it.
Well, they wanted a specific,
Okay, well, then you're asking for it.
that's what I had to do.
Okay.
And number
okay.
two,
One last
yes,
comment.
there is a problem, because I had to pay $350 just to ask a question. Now, I've been dealing with statutes on the VA because they are so screwed up that you can't, I mean, I don't think a lawyer can figure them out. And they've never asked me to submit $350 to 3 different papers to get an answer.
That's
And I
Tuesday.
think that's to stymie
Thank you, Dan.
any effort to petition.
Thank you, Dan. Motion on the floor is to continue. A motion was made by Ms. DeSanto and seconded by Mr. Farabee. Any further discussion from the board?
Just to clarify, it's just to continue.
That's
Your
what-
motion was just to continue, right? Do you want, oh, yeah, your substitute, but
motion
it's
was-
just to continue.
Correct.
No other added words or, okay. Just making sure.
All in favor of the continuance indicate by saying aye.
Roll call, please.
We can do it by roll call.
Okay,
If
so to
that's-
continue this to the next meeting, Ron, or
No.
Mr. Buskerud?
No.
DeSanto?
Yes.
Farabee?
Yes.
Hadcock?
No.
LaCroy?
No. Motion fails on a 3-2 vote, so we're back to the original motion to have Michelle draft a letter of opposition.
Roll call.
Send it out, and we'll do another roll call vote,
Thank
please.
you, Lloyd.
Okay, so roll call vote on
You
the
have any
first
further
motion.
discussion or not?
We can do another. Does anybody, you have something to say?
Make it very clear, there needs to be some specific grounds, not just a bunch of generalities, and I asked the question over and over, what were the basis? A year and a half ago, the basis was a factual situation. We're going to see a factual situation again. The Supreme Court has said SDCL 126-15 does not require a factual situation. SDCL 126-14, which is a declaratory judgment, which means a court does require an actual controversy. So I'm hoping that whatever document is drafted in accordance with the Supreme Court ruling of about a year and a half ago. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Buskerud?
Yes.
DeSanto?
No.
Farabee?
No.
Hadcock?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Yes,
3-2.
motion carries 3-2. Next, we have number 18, a request for approval of a building permit outside of county subdivision regulations. Chad Howie put on the agenda for Commissioner DeSanto. Mr. DeSanto, did you want to, or did you, Shannon?
Shadrach.
Shad here.
Chadwick,
Shadrach.
Shadrach here.
I don't know.
We need to continue it till he comes?
No. I don't think we need to continue it. I think in the light of
You show for
some information that we've learned, we should take a vote on it.
And he's not here?
You know, neither one of them are here.
I personally, if they're not here, this is my thought, I would like to see them deal with 19 before that, so I would probably want to continue this to the next commission meeting. That's up to the commissioners.
Go ahead.
This is to protect the county's interest. Really, I mean, I'm pretty certain that they haven't changed their mind on whether or not they want the permit, but in the light of additional information that we've obtained, I believe that it would be prudent for for us to go ahead and issue this permit so that we keep the county
I guess I'd like to hear.
out of liability.
Chairman,
You done? Mrs. Hadcock.
I'd like to hear from the applicant. I mean,
Okay.
if you have a hearing on request for approval of a building permit, I'd like to know what's going on and what's happening with the applicant before I decide that, you know, this is a great idea, and then what's going to be the next step? Is there going to be more permits, or, you know, I'd like to know all the information and have it on him visiting with us on tape, saying this is what's happening.
I understand. I'm
Miss
quite surprised they're not here. But
Michelle, I'll recognize
But Mr. Chair,
Mr. Farabee.
from what I know about this subject, this ought to be an executive session.
Miss Michelle.
I wouldn't disagree if we're going to go into the substance, but I would just want to reiterate, and I believe Commissioner DeSanto is referencing something that's a matter of public knowledge, and that is a notice of claim filed against the county with regards to I'm not sure that this board has in fact denied the building permit, but failure to issue the building permit. I would point out that I believe it's still the planning department's position is that independent of whether the building permit requirements have been met, the planning director and the county still need to consider the public health, welfare, and safety. And there is still a concern that there's only a single ingress and egress from this community. So in the event of emergency, everyone is going to be attempting to cross Bradsky Road Bridge, and that's an issue. There's an infrastructure problem. So although I understand there's been a notice of claim filed by Mr. Howie, it doesn't, independent of the merits thereof, we still have to consider the public health, welfare, and safety.
Thank you, Michelle.
Speaking,
PJ,
Mr. Chairman,
oh,
speaking of that, do we need to do 19 first before we
That's
do
what I was
18?
thinking. You were right, sorry.
that was my mistake. I brought that up earlier. I think we should have done 19 first for discussion, so I'd probably, at this point, table.
Yep, motion to table 18.
Motion made and seconded to table 18. Any discussion from citizens or board? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item number 19. I'll introduce PJ.
Sure.
So,
PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. You might not find the answers you're looking for in this presentation. We're just responding to a request from Attorney Knutson, the county's lawyer, for staff to look at alternative means of ingress and egress, ideal routes. Money, no option. Where's the best place? Also went down under his direction and talked with Dustin Willett, Emergency Management, and we're in concurrence, and this is nothing about the type of road, the construction, this is just location only, and it's just an idea. So on the two screens, you should be able to see in red the ideal situation, going straight down the existing section line and attaching with Antelope Creek. The other one is using an existing dirt road, partial two-track trail, the yellow one up to the left. Again, we're not the highway department. We don't build these. We don't know what these would cost or what they would entail. If you remember, Mr. Lynn Gray was a building permit that was approved by the board a little while ago. When he came in for his building permit, he actually had given some ideas in the past about this. And by the direction of Attorney Knutson, he had said to reach out to Mr. Gray and ask him what he thought. He actually thought the red one was the ideal route. It's the most direct. It's using an existing section line. He threw out the option of maybe having this done by the National Guard or the engineers during the summer when they come and do community projects. I understand also that it is very difficult to get done, but it is a possibility. So what we're looking at, because we were asked to do this, is the board direction now. Do you want us to take it one step further, or is this all you need?
what do you mean by one step further?
Do you want us to start working with Tom and Mark from the Highway Department and reaching out to National Guard and just see if it's a possibility?
I see no problem with
Mr.
that
DeSanto.
whatsoever.
Mr. DeSanto.
I don't see any problem with that. I
Is that free?
think that would,
Takes these guys' time, but.
I believe that that would be a good idea.
Any further discussion?
Researching all options is
Yeah, there's
always
no
a good
guarantee
idea.
that these will be done. It's just, is it okay to contact them on behalf of the county?
Do you need a motion or just
In
acknowledgement?
this instance, yeah, that'd be great. Please.
That'd be good.
I'll
Yeah,
make-
I think you're right.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Motion made by Hadcock and seconded by DeSanto to request the planning department to reach out and continue with options of the Bradsky Road. Help me out with that.
National Guard.
Yeah, the two options identified by Bradsky Road by county staff.
There you go. That was your motion. That was your second, right? Any further discussion from citizens? None. Mr. Farabee.
What's the purpose of a second access?
So people can get out in case of emergency.
The only purpose? What about emergency vehicles getting in? You know, to me, and this is my personal perspective, most important is for people to get in, emergency vehicles to get in.
Okay. I think it would depend on the emergency.
Assuming that I'm correct, that the primary purpose for a second access is for emergency vehicles. In a case like this, obviously people can flee to the hills, but emergency vehicles can't get in there. Anyway, assuming that's the case, then how many emergency vehicles are you going to find down there on Antelope Road?
I'm sorry?
How many emergency vehicles are we going to find down there on Antelope Road?
I don't know, sir.
So, would that be a second access? Sure. But is it achieving the purpose that we're after? And that's public safety for those folks that live in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farabee.
Most likely, I mean, all the issues the board has been talking about for the last year and a half, everything is to the north of Bradsky Road up closer to the airport. So that's where the floodplain is, that's where the bridge issue is. So, and I'm not sure if Dustin's in the audience, but I believe if something's going to happen up there, you don't want people to go that way. Get them the complete opposite direction and head south. Yeah. We're not asking, we don't know, doesn't need to be a highway quality road, maybe a 2-track trail or an 18 foot dirt road. We don't know. We just want to know, is it possible?
Thanks, PJ. And I think secondary access have multi-purposes, not just a specific one. Any further discussion? You got a follow-up, Mr. Farabee?
One more time, we have a 40 resident rule. What's it for? Thank you.
I don't think you need to answer.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeSanto.
I think the reason that we were looking at going that other direction across the Airport Road Bridge was just because it seemed like an easier access point. However, I can understand that if there's enough, we're putting in a new bridge on Bradsky Road. If there's enough water to cause damage to the Bradsky Road Bridge and knock that bridge out, then what's to say there's not enough water to do damage to the South Airport Road Bridge as well, and then we wind up with two bridges that aren't accessible. And I mean, I think exploring all options is not a bad idea.
And Commissioner, that's all we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. DeSanto. Motion on the floor is was made.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one quick comment.
Ron Busker.
I have no problem with doing exploration. They're not gonna do it. But now we're back to the government paying to build a road for an individual developer again. Instead of the county going to pay for it, now all the taxpayers of South Dakota will pay for it.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanto.
To address Ron's concern, which is a concern, obviously, I'm going to be meeting with the road districts out there and trying to ascertain whether or not we'd be able to help. They would be able to participate in a road that's going to benefit them.
Thank you.
Right, they're the ones that should be.
So the motion on the floor is to authorize planning department to explore the two
We still have it?
options.
Well, I put to authorize the county staff to take this one step further and contact the National Guard.
There you
Is that what you,
Okay.
okay, just making sure.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Vote, motion passes unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now we go back to, does somebody want to take 18 back off the table?
Make a motion and bring it off the table. Number 18.
And move to take off table, item 18.
Second.
Second. You wanna write?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. DeSanto. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 We're back on to item 18, the request for the approval of the building permit outside county subdivisions, and I'll turn this back over to Mr. DeSanto.
Well, as I said earlier, my purpose is to simply prevent the county from further legal costs, but I'm not going to argue with our state's attorney representative that we're looking at safety. We want safety for our people out there as well. So I guess in the fact of the matter that Shadrach did not show up, we'll go ahead and continue it. So I would move for a continuance.
Second.
Okay, I heard 2 seconds. Who wants it?
That's good.
Okay. Moved by DeSanto, seconded by Ron Buskerud to continue to our next meeting. Any further discussion on a continuance motion?
I have a substitute motion.
Mr. Farabee.
I think we should be discussing this in executive session. That's my motion.
We continue it, we're not discussing
Because of the urgency, well, I need a second before we talk, but
Yeah.
my motion is that we discuss this today in executive session.
I'll second that motion.
Substitute motion to discuss in executive session made by Farabee, seconded by DeSanto. Michelle. I need your help.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the reason for my motion is that
I am asking Michelle a question right now.
Yes, Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office.
Is that proper?
I don't see any reason not. We do have on our agenda an item to discuss legal matters in executive session. There is a pending legal matter associated with this building permit. So, and for that matter, perhaps Mr. Howie, giving him the benefit of the doubt, he may not have realized that this agenda item wasn't under planning and zoning matters. So perhaps we could table the matter again. And I can answer any legal questions concerning the appeal in executive session, and then we can
Okay.
untable it and perhaps resolve the matter.
Thank you, Michelle. Now I'll turn to Mr. Farabee for follow-up.
the lawsuit is public record, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be discussing our alternatives. And timing being of the essence, we need to talk about it today. Or it will be like Rapid City and sue, and be sued and lose and lose and lose. Thank you.
Ms. Hadcock.
I'll have a substitute to table this and see if he shows up later.
Second.
Another substitute motion is to table, and second by Ms. Hadcock and seconded by Ron Buskerud. Table to see if he comes back up later. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of tabling this, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
3 ayes to table with 2 noes from DeSanto and Mr. Farabee. Do you guys want a break?
You can't start till 10:30, so I'll make a motion to break till 10:30.
Second.
Motion's been made to take a break till 10:30 and seconded by Ron Buskerud. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Motion's been made to come out of recess.
Second?
Seconded. Motion made by
Me.
Buskerud and seconded by DeSanto to come out of recession. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Waiting on items from planning and zoning.
PJ Conover, Planning Director. Item 20, items from Planning and Zoning. The Board of Commissioners uses the consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for planning and zoning contains the following items. Item A, second reading of rezone 1711 and comprehensive plan amendments 1710 for Corey Weisbeck, and approval has been recommended. Item B, first reading and public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 1703 for Pennington County, as requested to be continued no later than May 1st, no later than the May 1st, 2018 Board of Commissioners meeting, and that is not the mining ordinance. That is the sign ordinance. Just make sure nobody leaves.
Thanks for the clarification, PJ. Any citizens from the public that would like anything from one of the two items from the consent agenda pulled? Seeing none, anybody from the board want anything pulled from the consent? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Moved by DeSanto, seconded by Ron Buskerud for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with one absent vote.
Thank you.
Next, we're at the end of the consent agenda. We're on the regular agenda items. Mr. PG.
Regular agenda item C is layout plat 1749 for Eric and Heidi Henriksen. This is a request to subdivide roughly 180.62 acres of a 264.69 acre owned area by the applicants into 10 lots. They're looking to create lots. Whoops, let's get this started, I guess. This is the existing property as it appears today. There is special flood hazard area zone A on the subject property, which does touch some of the existing structures on the east side of the subject property. Most of the structures and buildings on this property have been there prior to 1975. There are some new structures that were added. We are able to account for all the structures on the property that we need to. And right now, the landowner is aware that they are in violation of having multiple residences on the property. They have 4 residences. They had been working with the previous director since, I believe, 1998 to try and come into compliance, and it took some good steps and then went back a few steps. However, this request for a layout plat to subdivide this property into 10 lots does fix all of the problems that we know as far as the existing residences. And the landowner does know that the septic systems that are on the property will need to be pumped and inspected as part of this process. One of the conditions that we had when we talked about this with the Planning Commission was that a on-site visit be conducted. I went out there with their applicant, their agent, the prospective buyer of the property, plus the landowner. We went through the maps. We went through everything we did. I did make them aware that one of the recommendations from the environmental planner is going to be that the existing systems be pumped and inspected, and he didn't have any problem with that, and the prospective buyer seemed to be in favor of that prior to the purchase. So right now, of the proposed lots that they're looking to do, proposed lots 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, and 10 will not have any structures on them at this time. Most of those structures, again, are located on that east side of the property. This was routed through the interdepartmental review. Register of Deeds had a couple changes as far as the heading for the proposed plat. Regional Airport had commented that they would have to file Form 7460 from the Federal Aviation Administration. We can work with them on that. We've actually made it a very, very quick process. The county ordinance enforcement officer is in favor of this, as it's going to fix a lot of the known violations that are on the property. West River Electric did indicate that they would like a 25-foot easement around the property lines, but if they choose to do an 8-foot easement, they're just letting them know that they may have to go underground. The landowner, the proposed buyer, plus the agent are aware of that, and they're going to figure out what is going to work best. That's why the condition for that is worded that there be a minimum of 8-foot easement dedicated on the property lines, and that is also our standard easement. Other than that, there is a requirement for them also to find the base flood elevation for this property. Code of Federal Regulations 60.3B, base flood elevation data needs to be obtained if you're creating a subdivision that's over 50 acres or 5 lots. I'm sorry, 5 lots or 50 acres. And they are well aware of this, and the agent is working on that for them. The existing subject property contains, like I said, 4 separate known residences, and this should fix that known issue with the septic still being an item of concern. This is going to be a 3-step process. This is a layout, then it has to go to preliminary, and then a final plat, which the final plat is administrative, so you will hear this at least one more time with the preliminary plat process. The landowner's proposal to create Broomgrass subdivision will increase density in the area, and the opportunity for additional residential units will be added. One of the items that they did not include on the proposed plat was access to proposed lots 10, or the unplatted lot in the southwest corner. At the preliminary plat process, they are going to draw in a proposed access easement, so there are no landlocked parcels proposed for the layout plat. Even despite the concerns, we are pleased with the progress that's being made by the landowner, the proposed buyer, and the agent, and therefore staff finds no reason to recommend denial of layout plat 1749, and staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of layout plat 1749 with 19 conditions.
Thank you, PJ. Is there any comments from any citizens in the public on this item? Any discussion from the board?
Motion to approve?
A motion to approve with 19 stipulations. Seconded, motion made by Hadcock, seconded by Mr. Buskerud. Any further discussion? Mr. Fairview.
Which way are they leaning, towards lot size variance or rezone?
I do not know at this time.
Not leaning one way or another.
I haven't discussed it with them other than putting it in a condition. Yeah. I can go back, sorry, to follow up on your comment. This is the current land use in that area. The light green is general ag. The dark green is limited ag, with yellow being residential, low density. And then this is the future land use, so lower limited ag and more residential in the area.
Thank you, PJ.
You're welcome.
Motion on the floor is for approval. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Brittany.
This item, Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. This item is a memorandum of understanding with the City of Rapid City. Pennington County is required under the federal stormwater regulations, because we are considered a municipal separate storm sewer system. We have 3 areas in the county that are regulated under that NPDES permit, which is a National Pollutant Elimination Discharge. That we have to follow compliance with certain stormwater regulations. And every year we have to submit a report to the state for review. And in the last 2 reviews that the state has done, we have come back with a required corrective action to have a formal agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the City of Rapid City, because our stormwater in some of the areas, Colonial Pine Hills and in the Rapid Valley area, are somewhat intertwined because of the plating jurisdictions and the 1 mile septic jurisdictions. So we have been working with the state's attorney's office and the city attorney's office to get a memorandum of understanding of what our exact requirements are under this regulation and what we are doing within our ordinances and in our stormwater plan to meet those requirements. So the memorandum of understanding just kind of outlines what each jurisdiction is responsible for as far as our stormwater regulations and how we're complying with that and how we're working together to stay in compliance.
Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody from the citizens like to speak on that? Seeing none, board, have any questions? Mr. Farabee?
2 points. The first point I've raised before, stormwater management report or plan or whatever, typically implies that there's maybe a creek or something in the area. Universal Drive and Colonial Pine Hills, I can't understand whoever put those in this so-called protected area. Green Valley, yeah, Rapid Creek is right next to Green Valley, so I can kind of see that one. But Universal Drive, no. Colonial Pine Hills, no. Second point is that I understand that our new commander-in-chief has rolled back a bunch of this EPA nonsense. Is this part of that nonsense, or hasn't got to this one yet? Thank you. You don't have to answer.
So, Brittany, you're looking for a motion to authorize signature of the MOU, right?
Correct.
The chair's signature for MOU.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Hadcock to authorize chair's signature on the MOU by Hadcock, seconded by Buskerud. Any further discussion?
I'll be voting no because this is nonsense.
Mr. Farabee?
I'll be voting no because this is some more government nonsense. Thank you.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with 1 no from Mr. Farabee. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you.
Now, we come to the first reading of the public hearing ordinance amendment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce PJ, and he's going to give us all a little background on the mining and how it went and so forth, how long it's been. What I'd ask from the public is I'm going to ask for public comment. And so when you come up for public comment, just try and be respectful of how many people here that we have that want to speak. I think if we use some good speaking practices, and what I mean by that is not only to the audience, but the board, the first 30 seconds of your statement is the one that's heard the most. As you go on a little bit longer, you start losing people. So please remember that when you come up to speak, that please make your point direct right off the bat and where you're going. And then I'd also ask, we've got a couple people out in the audience that have quite a bit of stuff that they want to read. I would just ask you to give a little respect and wait towards the end so we can get through as many people as we can.
Chairman?
Ms. Hadcock.
I appreciate public comment today, but I think it would be better if we do it at a special meeting. If people want to speak, people came today to speak, I understand, so I don't think we should shut them down. But I also believe that this needs a special meeting on this ordinance. That way people can speak longer, meaning we can have just this on the agenda. And then I think at that point, you wouldn't have to limit people to 3 minutes or say, you know, you've talked long enough. It would be just for this mining ordinance, because this mining ordinance, we've been working on this for a year. So it needs to go through the public discussion, I believe, in a special meeting instead of just today. Because I think, again, it would be more beneficial to the people in the audience and to the board. So I don't know if the wish of the board is to have a special meeting on this, or if they'd like to listen today and do first reading. I would hope that we could move it to a special meeting and then make that first reading, that motion then.
So what I hear from Ms. Hadcock is she'd like to have a special meeting, but you could also approve the first reading today if you'd like to, and still have the special meeting to do more discussion, if that's what the board desires. But I'd like to hear from some other commissioners first.
Chairman, I just
Does
need,
anybody- let's
just
see.
No, it's not on this. I just need to go get some papers for one of the ladies, so I'm just going to excuse for just
Oh,
a second.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody else have any discussion or thoughts on the board?
Mr. Chair.
How they like, Mr. DeSanto?
I have no problem with a special meeting. However, I believe that we should be able to just go ahead and make the first reading, vote on the first reading today. All these people showed up to talk. Let's listen to them and make a decision on the first reading today, and then call a special meeting if need be. Maybe we'll get everything cleared up right now.
Okay.
Leave it open.
Any further discussion from Ron or George? You got something?
I tend to agree with Commissioner DeSanto.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I do too. I mean, these people are here for a reason, and I think we need to let them. I don't want to go through 2 or 3 hours today and then have a special meeting and go through 2 or 3 hours of the same thing again.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. It's everybody's waste of time, but they're here, we better hear them.
Okay. By all means,
Mr. Chair, I guess.
just a minute. By all means, when I was making my statement, I wasn't trying to limit anybody's speaking. I was just giving you some good speaking practices. When things go on a little bit longer, you tend to lose people. And I know there's some people that have some good information they want to share, and I was just asking for a little respect towards the end, because what you've got and took the time to prepare and want people to listen to takes a little more extra time and attention. That's all I was asking. With that, I'll recognize Mr. Farabee.
I guess my suggestion would be that those in the audience that have no problem making a special meeting, and I guess we do this at night, maybe they could hold off on their comments, and those that can't make another meeting, then they have a priority to speak, so to speak.
Okay.
Would be my suggestion.
The dates that we're looking at for a special meeting, if that happens, I believe is Tuesday the 13th, around 5 o'clock, and of February, and Tuesday the 15th at 5 o'clock. Those are the two options that were kind of floated around. So,
Mr. Chair, maybe we should set that date or that date and time, so that the folks then would have an idea whether or not they can make it.
Give those 2 dates again.
Tuesday the 13th at 5 o'clock, or Tuesday the 15th at 5 o'clock.
You mean Thursday, the 15th?
Yeah,
Or
it'd be Thursday.
Thursday, sorry.
That's okay, just making sure.
So a Tuesday or next Tuesday or Thursday at 5 o'clock. Yeah, they're looking at setting a date and then having the discussion, maybe. No motions are on the,
It'd be Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
My motion would be Tuesday, was that the 13th, whatever date it is, at 5:30.
I would second that.
so a motion's been made to have a special meeting on this mine ordinance at 5:30, Tuesday at 5:30. Motion was made by Farabee, seconded by DeSanto. Any further discussion? Anybody from the audience have any discussion on those about the special meeting? Oh, we got one.
Good morning, Gina Parkhurst. My preference would be Thursday, the 15th, but I can make the 13th work if I cancel something else. Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor is for the 13th, though. Any further discussion?
Yep.
We got one more.
Got one more there.
Good morning, Dwayne Abada. It would seem to me that if you have a special meeting and you're going to talk about this same subject now, you're going to get 3 hours of discussion here and 3 hours at a special meeting. You might want to think about perhaps or think about having the discussion here or just postpone it for a special meeting, either or. And frankly, I'd prefer a special meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dwayne. Recognize Mr. Busker.
I like George's comments. You know, that doesn't happen very often, but yeah, mark it down, George. But I think, and I agree with this gentleman, and I think I said it originally, there's no sense going through all this stuff twice. So anybody that can make the special meeting on Tuesday, I think if you could possibly hold off till then, great. If you, like this lady who would rather have it on Thursday and can't make it Tuesday, today's your day.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Chairman.
I think that's exactly what, we've got some people that traveled quite a bit to get here today, so we're going to hear them.
Chairman.
Mrs. Adcock.
And I have to agree because that way too, people that can't make it today, that 5:30 meeting, people are working and stuff today that asked me if we could have it later in the day so they can make their comments. So I appreciate it as well, and I think your public does.
Thank you. We had a young lady that was wanting to speak. Does she still want to speak? And this is on the special meeting. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Angel. I'm from the Rosebud Reservation. I'm only going to be available today. I have another week appointment somewhere else in another state.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. We'll hear you today. Any further discussion? With not hearing, no further discussion. Motion on the floor is to have a special meeting on Tuesday, the 13th at 5:30 on this ordinance. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're back to the item. PJ, could you give us a run through?
Sure.
Before we start taking public comment?
Yeah, and this timeline will no way do it justice for all the work that volunteers and appointed staff put into this. So this is item E, first reading and public hearing of Ordinance Amendment 1702. First started on April 5th, 2016 under a different board when that board appointed Commissioner Hadcock as chair of the Mining, Construction Permit, and Alternative Energy Committees. Because of proposed solar energy farm that was supposed to be applied for in the county, a substantial size, it was decided to do the alternative energy ordinance first, which took 7 months, and we knocked out 2 ordinances in that time and had a special committee over that. On December 12th, 2016 was the first meeting of the Construction and Mining Permit Committee, and it took just over 6 days, over a year. So 371 days before it was seen or heard by the Planning Commission on December 18th, 2017. The Planning Commission looked at it, heard some public input, heard also input from the committee members, and asked that the committee look at it one more time. So it went back down to the committee, came back up again on January 8th at the Planning Commission level. At that time, the Planning Commission decided to also hold a special Planning Commission meeting like the board just voted on. They scheduled theirs for January 17th of this year. On January 9th, the committee met again one day after the Planning Commission had asked them to join together, and they went through some of the newer items that had come up from public comment and, again, changed some of the ordinance. Excuse me. On January 17th, a special meeting was held, and the ordinance was continued by the Planning Commission for further research and comment. On January 22nd, the Planning Commission again heard the ordinance amendment. The first motion was by Commissioner Marsh and Commissioner Litzen to approve, bless you, to approve Ordinance Amendment 1702, which was then followed up with a substitute motion by Planning Commissioner Marsh and Planning Commissioner Litzen to approve Ordinance Amendment 1702, and that there needs to be further discussion on the language in Section H9B. So with that direction, members of the committee met again on January 31st of this year to look at that specific section. What you have in your packets is the original version as approved by the Planning Commission, and then there should be an additional version, I believe, with notes on the side, which is the version that came out of that January 31st meeting. With that, we're here today for the first reading of Ordinance Amendment 1702.
Thank you, PJ.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to take a moment of privilege and thank Ms. Hadcock and the committee members for all the hard work on this. As you just heard, you know, that was over a year's worth of work just on the mining work. And believe me, folks, when you look at the back of this packet, that's all the comments that come in from different various people that for us commission members to read. And so they put a lot of time and a lot of hard work into working on this ordinance, and a lot of times it was very emotional for a lot of different people because different things are coming up. So I just want to recognize them, Ms. Hadcock and the committee, for all the hard work they did, because it took a lot of time out of their day. With that, we'll start off with public comment. And as like I said, the first 30 seconds, you got my attention. The longer it gets, I mean, I'm just saying that's the best practices for speaking, but if you got a good point to make it right away. And so at this point, I guess I'd like to take some public comment unless somebody's got something different way to operate this. If none, who would like to speak first?
Basically, anybody who can't make it Tuesday.
Anybody who can't make it Tuesday. Sorry. Please give your name.
Good morning. My name is Phil Two Eagle. I'm the Executive Director of the Sichango Lakota Treaty Council from Rosebud. I'm here to submit a letter from our President, William Kendall, in reference to the zoning ordinance in the matter of the first reading on public hearing of Ordinance Amendment OA 17-02, Pennington County, to amend the Pennington County zoning ordinance to permit mining activities, to amend Section 103 definitions, Section 205-B-17 General Agricultural District, Section 212-B-12 Heavy Industrial District, Section 507-B Mining Permits, and Section 511 Fees, and to add Section 320 Mining Operation to the Pennington County zoning ordinance. I write to request the Pennington County Commissioners to accept this cover letter and resolution of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe opposing Rockford mining activities on lands adjacent to the Peshla property owned by in part by the Rosebud Sioux Tribe into the official record in the above reference hearing on amending the Pennington County zoning ordinance to permit mining activities. Rosebud Sioux Resolution RST number 2017-338 on page 1 provides in pertinent part as follows. Therefore, be it resolved that the Rosebud Sioux Tribe opposes the opening of public lands to exploratory drilling for gold and diamond on public lands surrounding Peshla based upon continuing violations of 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie provisions and upon the threat of toxic mining waste pollution into the water and environment surrounding Peshla. And be it also resolved that the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Council authorizes and directs the President of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe or his authorized delegate to submit this resolution of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe and any supporting documents to the U.S. Forest Service opposing the permitting any exploratory mining activities in the Rockford Gold Project. While RSC Resolution number 2017-338 was intended to oppose the permit by U.S. Forest Service for exploratory drilling for mining on public lands, the clear and unambiguous intent of the Rosebud Sioux Tribal Council is to oppose mining activities on the lands around the tribe's Peshla property due to its grave and immediate threat to exposure from toxic mining waste pollution to the water, land, and environment. Please enter this letter and resolution as opposition to the amendment of the zoning ordinance to permit mining activities as part of the official hearing record in the matter of the first reading and public hearing on Ordinance Amendment OA 17-2 Pennington County to amend Section 103 definitions, Section 205B-17 General Agricultural District, Section 212B-12 Heavy Industrial District, Section 507B Mining Permits, Section 511 Fees, and to add Section 320 Mining Operation to the County Zoning Ordinance. Sincerely, William Kendall, President of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. I also want to submit to the on my behalf, I want to submit State of South Dakota in the 93rd session Legislative Assembly 2018 Senate Resolution Number 1, introduced by Senator Heinert. This is a resolution confirming the legitimacy of the South Dakota support for the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. Whereas the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations of the Northern Great Plains entered into the treaty with the United States of America in 1868 at Fort Laramie. Whereas the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty guaranteed to the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations the absolute and undisturbed use of Great Sioux Reservation, which encompasses all South Dakota lands west of the Missouri River, including the sacred Black Hills, and that no person shall be permitted to pass over, settle upon, reside in the territory without the consent of the Sioux tribes. Whereas the United States federal government attempted to purchase this land legitimately through voluntary sale, but was denied on multiple occasions. Whereas on the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations refused to sell their land voluntarily, the federal government responded with aggression, force, coercion, and manipulation by detaining those deemed hostile, passing the Sioux Appropriations Bill and the Congressional Act of 1877. Both of these legislative acts used sign or starve tactics to force Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations to relinquish the Black Hills to the federal government. Whereas after the land was seized, continuous attempts to forcibly assimilate the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations left them open to deception and fraud from the private sector. Whereas the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations' legal right to their land has been confirmed by rulings of the Indian Claims Commission in 1974, the United States Court of Claims in 1979, and the United States Supreme Court in 1980, all of which maintain that the United States federal government violated the Fifth Amendment by seizing without compensation land that rightly belonged to the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations under the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. Whereas Indian tribes are recognized as sovereign entities in the United States. Whereas the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty stipulates that no treaty for the cessation of the Great Sioux Reservation land is legitimate without obtaining signatures of the 3/4 of the male Indian inhabitants. Yet without their consent and against their will, the tribes of South Dakota, once entitled the Great Sioux Reservation, 134 million acres, have been unjustly and unlawfully confined to less than 10 million acres of reservation. Whereas Article 6 of the United States Constitution declares that treaties are the supreme law of the land, whereas the Treaty of Fort Laramie is of great significance to the Oceti-Sakowin sovereign nations of the northern Great Plains regions of the United States. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate of the 93rd Legislature of the State of South Dakota, that the legislature recognizes and honors the importance of the validity of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. Be it further resolved that the Rosebud Sioux Tribe fully supports the upcoming commemoration of the 150th anniversary of the signing of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty by educating Native and non-Native people about the treaty and by illustrating to the government of the United States of America that we are still here and we are seeking a future forward-looking positive relationship with full respect for the sovereign status of Native American nations confirmed by the treaty. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Just to reconfirm from the beginning, it's an opposition. And we got copies of what you read. I've also got the resolution also. I think the commission has that. Got your resolution 2017-338. I'll recognize Ms. Hadcock.
Yes, there's, Holly is printing out some materials that Ms. Roach and, I forgot her name, Miss Cheryl brought, so they'll have that for the next meeting as well. She's printing all that out for us, so that way we have it for the next meeting, we can review it, and then if we have more questions, there should be other people that are representing for the tribe that we can discuss some of this with, or call if we need to. So.
Thank you. PJ, could you explain, a little bit about the different mining ordinances for us so we can keep track? Because right now I think we're talking about, there's some other diamonds, precious metals. I think I don't want to get these confused as we move forward with ours.
Sure. In our ordinance proposal, there's two sections. One is 320, which deals with aggregate, gravel, And then there's section 507B, which deals with minerals. They're kind of two separate issues on our level and on the state level. So I guess to differentiate the two, so we're aware, just from staff's aware with the comments too, if there are comments associated with 320 with gravel and stuff, and then with the hard rock, because they have different requirements even on the state level. So.
Okay.
One more time.
That's-
Sorry, Commissioner. So what Brittany's basically saying is the first ordinance on 320 is about aggregate. The next set would be on in situ, and I think this commission needs to move forward as soon as possible to form a committee that looks at the in situ, which is uranium, gold mining, and it's a whole different type of mining in a sense than just aggregate mining. They have chemicals and different things that actually I'm not going to speak on it because I don't even know that. So bottom line is I went through aggregate and I don't know about in situ enough. So we need to move forward on that. We put like a little piece in there on in situ mining, but there's going to be a committee formed, I believe, and hopefully this commission will involve planning commission, planning staff, and then the public, and then again some people that do mining, and hopefully then as well we can have some of the people from that know about the treaties and stuff then on that committee as well. So we're doing that right as well.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you, Ms. Haggard. Brittany, thank you for the clarification, because I just wanted to make people aware out in the audience that there's going to be continued work, and it's on the 507B as they discussed, but the board needs to get through working on this ordinance with 320 now.
Yes.
So don't think we disregarded the other part of it. It will be coming up. So, next, please.
Ms. Cheryl.
Do we have quite a few people that are going to wait for the special meeting? Could you raise your hand, please? 1, 2, you guys are going to wait for the special meeting on Tuesday? Okay. Ma'am, while they're going through, she can go. Yeah, she said you.
Gina Parkhurst again. I just have a few brief comments. I do support this meeting on February 13th to further review 507B because it does deal with minerals, which are different than aggregate, and minerals include open pit mining, not just in situ. And I further suggest that all commercial mining in Pennington County require conditional use approval, and that the County Board of Commissioners give the final approval of all mining permits. And a new mine should not have automatic rubber stamp approval if it meets all the conditions in the ordinance. When making that decision, the County Commission should have some flexibility to address new issues and apply new conditions not envisioned by drafters of this ordinance.
Jeannie, could you state your name again one more time?
Oh,
sorry.
sure. Gina, G-E-N-A.
Gina, okay.
Parkhurst, P like Peter, A-R-K-H-U-R-S-T.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for taking public input. It's wonderful to have government by the people and for the people.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Would anybody else like to come speak? We still waiting. She's going through her paperwork, or is she going to hand it out?
Cheryl, are you ready to speak, Ms. Cheryl? Come up here, honey.
Good question.
Yep. I think, PJ, she's asking how the process of Ms. Cheryl's asking about the process of what first reading means. If you could explain that to the audience.
What we've done traditionally is put it on the agenda, bring it before the board, make the versions available to the public online.
So what he's saying, Ms. Cheryl, is that this is first reading, there's a second reading as well. What we're going to have today is we're going to have, I don't know, we're not making a board decision today on first reading, are we?
We don't know yet.
Okay, sorry. And if we do or if we don't, we'll still have the special meeting on Tuesday, February 13th. And then there'll be, either they can decide there on the second reading, depends on what happens today, or they can continue it to the next county commission meeting. So you have two readings basically of this mining ordinance before it's passed through, or approved or not approved.
Okay, so the part that I want to talk about is actually the last two paragraphs that were added.
Okay.
Okay, and I can't find the last two paragraphs is what I'm looking for, because we have this.
Okay.
Maybe
My glasses.
you want to take a little more time and look for those paragraphs, and
Okay.
then did you want to help her?
Okay, no.
Ms. Brittany.
Oh, then she's.
Mr. Chair, to answer her question, she asked if we read these documents, and we typically don't.
Yeah,
Now, it's a legitimate question, and we should give her an answer.
yeah, she was asking what
Do
first
we actually
reading
read
is.
them? No.
We don't actually read the whole ordinance out loud. We'd be here for quite a while, but it's just a matter with the first hearing, making all the documents available so people can review them, and then by the second reading, you have time, between the two, you have time to review them, and if you have any questions, to answer some more.
Ms. Cheryl, on the, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms.
Chairman.
Haggard.
So on that part, that's going to be basically just broken down into more of a committee, if I'm correct, Ms. Hawley. Maybe you can verify. That would be a committee that's going to move forward on more of the uranium and stuff like that. Am I correct, Brittany or Holly?
If the board puts that on record and gives that direction, yes.
Okay, so this basically, this ordinance about aggregate, and the next one is going to be, it's going to be continued on 507B. I don't know if they're going to call it 507B, and that's going to be more on in situ, which is hard rock. Is that the term, Danielle? Hard rock mining?
Hard rock mining?
Okay.
Okay. So the process of applying for this permit, that's what I really have a hard time accepting, because the South Dakota Department of Natural Resources.
Right.
Okay. They have on their website, it literally says a one-stop permit shop, and they use the state historical preservation hour. They use those archaeologists to say whether or not they're going through historic lands or not. But the entire state of South Dakota, for us, is very historic, and there are sites that need to be preserved that the state historic preservation officers aren't aware of and aren't letting the people who are requesting these permits that say, oh, well, you have to go through the tribal historic preservation officers, because they're the ones who know. So.
Ms. Cheryl, they don't know what you have told me in the hallway about what you're talking about, so you got to kind of start about the beginning of what you're opposing and why you're opposing. Does that make sense? Because you told me in the hall, but the Rochford Road and the mining that's going on there by Pace Law and why you're here today.
Okay.
And you had told me there's some private land there and there's state land there. I think that's what. Yes, ma'am. If you could explain that to the board.
Okay. So there are maps.
Could you please identify yourself for the video, first name and last name?
Okay, my name is Cheryl Angel. I'm from Elizabeth, South Dakota. I'm an enrolled member there, but I was born here in the Black Hills. So these are my homelands. Tens of thousands of people for tens of thousands of years. People like me, this is our homelands. Okay, so we've been everywhere, but this is the site where we came from and where we're going to go back to, is this Peshla area. Okay, so the water that comes out of there, the minerals, the mining, all of that. In the Great Sioux Nation of the 1868 treaty, that was a reservation area. Tribal Historic Preservation officers have jurisdiction and actually mark those areas. We do that. I'm a cultural surveyor. I do that. So I know where these marks are. Our tribe knows where all these sacred sites are, but the state historic preservation officers do not know where these sites are. So they work with the Department of Natural Resources, and they go through the SHPOs, that's what we call them, and then they get their permit, and the SHPOs sign off on them, but they don't get the tribal. They don't go through the tribal historic preservation officers, and they should be contacting the tribes because of Section 106. That's where the tribal historic preservation officers are funded under, and that's where they get their authorization. So they're skipping out on this whole part of the permitting process, and that's what concerns me, because that means that my voice and the places where my people have been laid down and where they not only have their ceremonies, but where they actually lay their bones, those aren't taken into considerations when these permits are being handed out. So that's my whole issue with this, is that our sites, our people, the places that are sacred to us aren't being recognized, and they're being endangered.
But you had,
Thank you, Cheryl. Ms. Hadcock.
sorry.
Okay.
So Cheryl, the main thing is the water. There's some private land over by Rochford where they're mining. I don't know what what company that is. Then there's some Forest Service land. Is the private land your land that there, or is it,
Okay.
how's it infringing on Pace law and
So
does that make sense?
Pesh law, they have a map, and on that map is a fence, and that's the Pesh law fence. Okay, so the place where they're going to inject and go down however many thousands of feet is right on that property boundary line. So I could just climb over the fence, and then I would be standing on the place that they want to drill down into. And the one of the officers was at a meeting last week. It was just last week here at the Mystic Ranger Service, and he was speaking, and the information that he was giving wasn't the same as the information that was on the paper. And so that was very concerning to me, because he was saying it was all on, he said it was on state land and it was on private land. And yet the ordinances don't, they apply to state. They were saying this is state land and private land is different. And they can go ahead and, private people can go ahead and do mining, but they can't without following the state laws. Is that right? If I own land and I want to drill on my land, don't I have to follow state laws?
Yes, if I'm correct, but
Yeah. And if you're on federal laws, then you have to follow federal laws.
Right.
And if you're on Pesh law land, then you should be following those laws.
So,
But in essence, right, they should be following the permitting process of,
so PJ, could you?
according to those permits.
Sorry, Ms. Cheryl. Can you tell me, does this ordinance affect what's happening on private land up there by Pace Law? I mean, does this ordinance is this going to be affecting what's happening up there? Because I heard there's some private land up there too.
It's my understanding that we have no our department doesn't have any jurisdiction inside Pace Law. I know there's been a lot of discussions with the Sheriff's Department, but that was a long time ago and that was a different board.
But what if it's not Pace Law's land, it's private land with, is it Pace Law's land that's a private land that they're mining and stuff besides?
Nope, it's individual private land.
What's that?
It's very adjacent to it.
Okay, I apologize.
I think that was the question.
Yeah.
So it won't, this ordinance will or won't affect that?
My understanding is we have no jurisdiction inside the limits of Pace Law at all. Actually, I was just speaking with the Bureau of Indian Affairs last week for the comprehensive plan to ascertain that that gets labeled a specific way, because we don't have jurisdiction in there. So we are cognizant of that area.
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanto.
I believe hold on, PJ. I believe what Cheryl is asking is, does this ordinance affect the private property adjacent to the Pace Law land? Am I correct?
Of course it will.
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Farabee.
I thought this was about aggregate mining, not hard rock mining.
It is.
So let's stick to aggregate mining.
It does have the section at the back she's talking about, Commissioner Farabee, that is about Hard Rock. Brittany has something, if that's okay, Chairman.
Ms. Brittany?
I do have some comments. I did speak with State DENR yesterday regarding some of the activities at the Mineral Mountain, the Rochford area. They have received a permit for exploration permits. And my understanding from speaking with staff there is that the exploration pits are given to the applicants through the state. Statutorily, they are the only ones that can provide exploration pits to these companies. It is on private land. It's an existing mine. I forget the name of it, but there's an existing mine up there that has been there for a while in this area that they're doing it. As far as what's under 507B in this situation, if they were to come and get their permits from the state, according to the state, they are a couple years away at a minimum. They're years away is what he said. We would be notified a year or two in advance before the permit would even be reviewed or approved by the state. In the meantime, the way that what we are proposing in 507B, they would have to go through the conditional use permit process to get a permit to do it on their private lands. If they are on federal lands, typically in the past, if their special use permit or whatever permits they have from the Forest Service require them to follow local regulations, then they do come to the county and get permits from us. There are some mining activities that do have permits from the county and the federal under the U.S. Forest Service because of the conditions of their permit with the Forest Service. In addition, under 507B, the conditional use permit still has to meet the requirements of 320. And under 320, we do have a section in there, and it was added due to public comments for agency comments, and it did add tribal. So under that, when we would review those permits, whether it be the conditional use permit for the mineral mining or aggregate mining, those agency comments or those tribal comments could be taken into consideration by the board for their permits.
Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Tanya Stans. I was born and raised in Oglala, South Dakota, but I'm a resident of Pennington County. And the reason I want to speak is, and I will be coming back to the hearing next week, but just to clarify some of this information. And so, and the reason Cheryl was speaking on a broader range scope is because she will not return. So directly, she's addressing just the mining ordinance. And then, but and so as a people, as a nation, of all the tribes that are connected to the Black Hills, and Pennington County is a piece of the Black Hills. So that's what we're trying to address. Now, when this mining ordinance comes into play, we're not, the tribal consultation, our archaeological consultations, were not being consulted. So anytime any of these mining ordinances are going through, they have to go through the tribes that are connected to the Black Hills in the Pennington County land base. So when these, whether it's aggregate or, whichever type of mining it is. Now, what we have is, and what Phil brought was the Rosebud Sioux Tribe's letter. And then we have one from the Oglala Sioux Tribe. Now, each tribe that's connected to the Black Hills, the National Forest has about, and there was packets of this given out. There was, I believe, 16 tribes connected. So anytime any of these mining ordinances are going through, because it's connected to the Black Hills, the whole county, we are not being consulted. So that's what we're, the comment that, we're trying to put out here. Now, what I have is that, and let me just make sure I cover everything. So our tribal TIPLs are a congressional act. So either way, from each level of government, they have to be consulted and they have the right to survey that area because we are the indigenous people of the Black Hills. And we have very historical places here that aren't being recognized. So we're trying to get that in the Pennington County Commissioner's Mining Ordinance. And so, anyway, that's what I just wanted to cover, and I hope I kind of consolidate that into a little more understanding. And did you have any questions?
Oh, thank you, Donna. I think you did a very good job.
Okay, thank you.
Did the board have any questions
And-
for Tanya?
Good. I gave her my.
Get a final comment, Tanya?
Okay, our treaties, and we're going to stick to the treaties, is that the Black Hills were never for sale. The Black Hills aren't for sale. And it's in the treaties. So that's what we stand on.
Thank you, Tanya. At this time, is there anybody else who'd like to speak that is not going to make it to the special meeting? Sir? You were the first one I seen raise your hand.
Jim Dean, Dakota Stone. I won't be able to make the meeting next week. I appreciate all the work that's been done with Deb and the committee, trying to be as fair as I can with the mining community. I would ask that if you guys if there are any other changes made due to the comments, that I would be notified of those so that I can study them and maybe comment on them. So, just through the email process, anything that you guys decide to do, if you could just get that to me as soon as possible.
Jim, does Holly have your email?
Holly does, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is first reading, Chairman. It's first reading. So if any changes are made at first reading, then that would go on to second reading. So you'd get those before then, Jim.
Right. Yeah, if I could get that before the second reading, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair.
Mr. Farabee.
And I presume we'll record the special meeting, so Jim, you can watch this meeting and the special meeting, and so whatever we don't get to you, you can watch on the video, audio video.
Okay. Sir, I need to see another hand out in the audience.
Hi, my name is Richard Bell. I'm a resident here in Rapid, Pennington County. Mr. Commissioner, I'd just like to say I'm not sure I'm going to make the Tuesday meeting, so I'd just like to go on record in opposition to, I'm not sure. I'll ask a question here in a minute, but let me just say in advance, I was out hiking the Rochford area last Sunday, and there are a lot of people who don't have any idea what's coming their way in terms of just disruption. If they don't own mining rights below their property, they're going to get destroyed. And this is such a beautiful area. Again, our Native American brothers and sisters find it very sacred. And I just hate the Mineral Mountain Mining Company has said they're going to make another homestake mine out of this area. And if that happens, we have to have enough regulations to really either contain this or stop it. But the question I have for the board is, are we and if you're going to have a second meeting to deal just with 507B, is it the intent, and with all due respect to Deb Hadcock and the committee who made the aggregate mining, that's really very thoroughly done. Now we've got these two paragraphs, 507B in there. Is it the idea that that's going to be pulled out, and then there's going to be a whole separate ordinance written for the hard rock mining? And if that's the case, we'll be watching how this 507B goes. But I just like a little clarification if that's the intent of this commission.
Thank you, Richard. I'll refer to Ms. Hadcock for response to that.
Actually, I'll refer to Miss Michelle because the last meeting I wasn't at 507B in Brittany, I ended up having a migraine. So,
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. Actually, the way 507B came to be drafted was in response to one of the planning committee meetings back in November, December, and the concerns were voiced by citizens with regards to the absence of any regulation of hard rock mining. So we recognize that we, as Commissioner Hadcock has stated, that we need to form a separate committee, and that committee will do similar work
They're going to look at the issues concerning hard rock mining. We welcome anyone here who has spoken or not here who has a concern with regard to hard rock mining to participate in that committee. And there will be a separate section, it may be 321, but there will be a separate ordinance drafted solely addressing these special concerns of hard rock mining. So in summary, 507B was really drafted as a stopgap. The mining moratorium ends April 5th. So my understanding is 507B was just created as a stopgap until we can form that committee and bring forward to this commission another ordinance concerning hard rock mining.
Thank you, Michelle. I knew I should have called you that at the beginning. I knew it.
Mr. Chair, the
follow-up, Deb?
I agree with what Michelle is saying, because the first committee, it took us a year and to tackle the uranium and all the different things in there. It's going to take a while to get that done, let alone who's going to be on the committee and who's going to run the committee. I'm guessing George Fairby would like to run that committee, but I'm kidding, George. But at this point, I think it's going to be good discussion. I can tell you in a year's time, we've had some pretty intense voices in our commissions. I enjoy that. People always think that opposition in your committee is bad. It's always good. You start thinking more, you start looking, and then you have a lot of passion both ways for mining and citizens. So I think whoever runs that next committee will enjoy, in one sense, the different sides. And then what it comes to, it, as you see from 18 pages, is I think we did a good job, but there's things that could be changed. But I think overall, 18 pages of the first set of the mining, I think, hit a lot of people's concerns, whether it be the public or the mining companies, to see if we can find solutions. So bottom line is we need to, as a board, move forward on another committee for the next set of hard rock mining. I think that's what Michelle's saying in a nutshell.
Yes, and if I could add for the benefit of the board and the public, 507 does state that at a minimum, mineral mining permits must be in compliance with Section 320. 320 specifically states under 320 Section A, as far as applicability, that all mining operations must comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal law, rules, and regulations. And then under 320G2, under agency comments, it specifically states that all comments received from any federal, state, and/or tribal agency. Basically, this is the 320G2 is setting forth additional documents that must be submitted with a mining application, and it includes any comments from federal, state, and/or tribal agency in response to an application for a South Dakota mining license concerning the property that is the subject of the current application. So those documents would be required to be submitted as well as part of any application.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Farabee.
Before we go launching off onto the hard rock, or whatever terms you want to use, in situ, I guess, would be kind of related to hard rock, but has anybody looked at what the state has in the way of regulation? No. I'm a firm believer that this kind of stuff should come from Pier, not from 66 counties in the state of South Dakota. But my understanding is that the state does regulate hard rock mining and in situ. So why are we going to launch off onto a program without studying and see what the hell the state laid on for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farabee. Looks like we have another speaker.
I sent a copy, Nancy Hilding.
You need to identify yourself.
Nancy Hilding. I sent a copy of the draft ordinance to DNR Mining Department, and I think they reviewed it and called up their attorney called up your attorney. So DNR has reviewed your draft ordinance.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there anybody else that would like to speak before we move forward? One more. Yeah.
My name is Regina Brave. I just wanted to say something about what you mentioned
about the state and peers should be handling this. What I'm really concerned about is that there's Pennington County should have the first and last say so over what we want here or don't want, because there's a lot of residents whose water is going to be affected, and the mining will affect the water sources and the aquifers that are feeding into Rapid City and outlying areas. I'm concerned about the farmers and ranchers, and if the water is contaminated at any given aquifer within this Pennington County, will affect all of us, whether we live here in Pennington County or in the other counties. And that's what I'm concerned about, because of the thousands of gallons that would be required in the mining or even in the in situ, like she addressed. And we should take that very seriously as people who occupy this part of the state. We shouldn't have to go let peer decide for Pennington County when we're the ones that are going to be affected by this mining. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. At this point in time, do we have anybody that has a burning desire to share? Does that sound familiar to some people? Anybody? We got one more.
Okay. Tanya stands here again, and we had some of our handouts here, and so it discusses a memorandum of agreement to be negotiated to avoid, minimize, or mitigate these adverse effects. So what I'm tying that into, since we have that memorandum of agreement from the tribes, that this is our Oglala Sioux Tribal Ordinance about the Black Hills.
Okay.
So I don't know if the packets would get out there, but this is the particular piece here, and then this is the Oglala Sioux tribe. And again, there's 16 tribes tied into the Black Hills, to the Pennington County rules and regulations of the historical areas in the Black Hills, which ties into all the mining. So the hard rock mining that's being addressed, we still have to survey on our own tribal surveyors that do that job, and that's what's being ignored on the DNR, the South Dakota DENR, and some of the federal lands. They're still ignoring that. So we want that acknowledged on the county commissioner level. Okay?
So
thank you.
One more thing.
Hadcock.
Ms. Tanya, they don't have that yet, but they'll add it to the packets, and before Tuesday they can read it and understand, because you handed us kind of a big packet today.
Okay.
So they don't have that yet, but they will get it. Holly made copies for everybody for the boxes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tanya.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh,
I'm going to be very quick.
Nancy?
I may
Nancy,
have to.
you gotta
Nancy
keep
Hilding,
recognizing.
Prairie Hills Audubon Society. I hope I can be here on the 13th. I may need to go into Pier on bills, so I'm just say something really quick. I'll try to write it up and send it to you. We've attended most of the meetings with Deb and the other people. We suggested that you copy. This is like looking at the forest instead of the trees, that you should have conditional use for all mining, wherever you're allowing it, when it's commercial mining. This is what Lawrence County does, who's very experienced with this. And there's going to be an argument about the in harmony clause, about whether the commission should reserve discretion for itself, or if they cross all the I's and dot the I's and cross the T's, whether they automatically get a permit. We hope that you will keep discretion, and we think that the appeal that should be automatic and people don't have to qualify it for. But if I can't come, I hope I'll write some comments. She knows what.
Well, folks, I think at this point in the venue, we've identified, number one, we're going to have a special meeting on Tuesday the 13th at 5:30. So the rest of you can come and speak, and we're going to talk on the 520.
320. Yes, sir.
The 320 ordinance, which has to do with the aggregate. Today we've heard a lot of discussion on the minerals part and the 50CB, and I think we've clarified that as that's going to be a future committee. Possibly the discussions are going on, but I believe the commission wants to get through this one first. So at our next meeting, that's what we'll concentrate on. With the board, with the decision we need today, we got the choice. We can approve the first reading and still have the second meeting and nothing changes, just to start moving forward. Or you can continue this to the next board meeting, which would be the February 13th, Tuesday. Either way works. I think the approval of first reading is the neatest out of the two. That gives people the chance to, who are really in opposition or really want some work, to make a point to be there. So I'm looking for the board for direction.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue.
Hold on, but you got to be identified before Mr. DeSanto had his first.
Before it?
I would recommend that we move forward with approval of the first reading.
Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Now I'll recognize Mr. Farabee.
I move that we continue the first reading until February 13th at 5:30.
Okay, so motion was made by Mr. Farabee to continue first reading to February 13th, 5:30, and seconded by Ms. Hadcock. Did you have a follow-up on that?
Nope.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of continue first reading to the February 13th at 5:30, I'll indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes with 1 no from Mr. DeSanto. Next, we have an item that's been tabled. Do we want to deal with that now, or do you want to wait till after executive session? We got an executive session.
Mr. Howie's here now.
He's here.
Yep.
But we're at the end of our agenda, so Mr. Howie, would you be willing to wait another 15 minutes to after executive session, or would you like to just come up and present now?
If the executive session is
Pertinent?
to this, I should wait. If it's not, I'd like to get it out of the way.
I believe it's pertinent.
Okay, so you're, Mr. DeSanto, you're suggesting to wait to untable?
Correct. Table it until after executive session.
Just a little more patience, Mr. Howie. Thank you, folks, for all coming here today.
Thank you.
Items from chair and commission members. I have no items to bring up. Does the
Just
Ms.
on,
Hadcock?
sorry, I'm not saying chairman today very well. Sorry, Commissioner LaCroix. Just about the stock show, on the committee, Mr. DeSanto and.
Committee reports.
Right.
We're on items. If you got something you want to work on?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said committee reports. I'm not behaving well. Sorry, Chairman.
Okay, well, we'll get back to it. There's nobody's got any items from that I know of. So we'll move right on to committee reports. So you can continue. Sorry.
I just want to thank everybody that participated in the stock show and the staff from the fairgrounds. They're amazing. As you know, they did a really good job. Lots of things going on. The schedule was absolutely full. And I don't know if you've ever been there during the stock show at the event center and the different arenas around in there and the things they do, but it's just jam-packed. So the staff at the fairgrounds, if you've ever watched them, they get up in the morning, early mornings of the day, and they work till early morning of the next day. So just to get these events and these things, so they go through with no glitches. So I'd just like to thank Ron and his staff for an amazing job for the county and the fairgrounds. So great events.
You're done, Mr. DeSanto.
I would also like to add on to that and thank all of the volunteers as well. I spoke to several volunteers, and to reflect Deb's sentiments on the staff, that many of those staff members were getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. That stock show takes a lot of work, and they get hundreds of volunteers. But even with hundreds of volunteers, the staff still has to manage those volunteers and direct them and help them to understand what their job is. And that takes a tremendous amount of time. And therefore, because of their hard work, the stock show is an amazing success. It's incredible. So I would like to thank those folks as well.
Anybody else? My only comment would be for committee reports. I really don't have much to report. I can tell you I did 2 phone conferences with the South Dakota Civil Rights Commission. We did 2 of those. I attended the Health and Human Services Board meeting. The 4 meeting of School of Mines and everybody else meeting. Me and Mr. DeSanto attended that. Among other things, one of the highlights of my day, the last 2 weeks, I think, was I met with John Morrell, our HR guy. And I was really impressed in how fast he's picked up and he's moving forward, and he's working with some of the staff to actually make some changes. Not only at looking at different employees, but also policies and procedures, and he was working with Janet on some stuff, and I was really impressed. And so I just wanted to express that.
Nice.
I think he's doing a good job and he's on the right track. He's reached out and he's making some good contacts with inter departments also. So that's the plus side. The only other thing I had to report out with our, they call it the Big 8-4 meeting, was I think Mark had gotten, I forwarded him the email also, that we'd gotten, one of the discussions was railroad tracks repair. And me and Mark were both kind of shocked that it takes 2 years from identifying it to being able to get anything done on it.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 years. It was
On the
like,
railroad board, that's crazy.
So, but for right now, that's all I've got to report.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanto.
I attended a 204G committee meeting yesterday morning, and it appeared that we were a little bit fractured on whether or not we really understood what we were supposed to be doing, and I think that we've come to the conclusion that we need to, PJ helped us out in instructing us to write out what the goal of this committee is so that we can streamline the process of the committee. And I guess I'm saying this because I'm getting a good understanding of what the other committees go through when they start from scratch, because we're really starting from scratch. I mean, we only have 2 sentences in an ordinance to address this, and it's bigger than it appears. So anyhow, I think we're going to be on the right track from this point forward, and things will get done.
So 204G is the animal.
The animal keeping ordinance.
I like 204G better.
You're funny.
Okay, no more reports. Let's move on to the 2018 legislative session updates on proposed bills. Holly, could you help me out?
Sure. Commissioners, in your packet was the most current bill list from Thursday morning. There has been bills added since then, but this is the opportunity for the commission to discuss any proposed legislation that's out there. If you want to take a position on any of them in support, opposition, if you want to direct staff to find out more information on any of them, this is your time to discuss them.
Thank you, Holly. I noticed there's 4 I think we probably need to make a position on personally. Ms. Saylor's got 3 she'd like our position on.
Yeah, there was some information in there from Janet. She might have gotten caught up and busy at this moment, but yeah, House Bill 1158, House Bill 1195, and Senate Bill 1. At this point, I don't know what their current status is in the process.
Okay.
If she still wants to oppose or not.
Let's wait and go. I think we got SB 98 and 99 from 911.
Yep, those are the 911 bills. I spoke with Ted Rufflet. He didn't think the board needed to take a position on these one way or the other. They're working their way through the process very well right now. It's completely up to the board if you want to so do that, but he had a favorable report on those, and they're
Okay,
working
so
their way through.
I'll set those to the side.
Mr. Chair,
Where you at?
Holly mentioned House Bill 1185. I think it's 1183 you're talking about.
No, 1158, 1195?
I got 1158. Well, it might have been 1195. Okay.
Okay,
Busker, did you see any?
It's-
Did he see any when you were looking through them, Busker?
we got,
Sorry.
Oh, wait.
Well, I thought you were done.
no, I'm not done yet. But,
Keep going.
no, I'm going through. How about, let's talk about SB 86. That's the one with, county commissioners with,
Where you at, Lloyd?
it's this one, number 22. It's got 22 written on it. That comes from Minnehaha County about doing, it's about the night, about doing auctions and,
Okay.
you remember that one?
Yep, thank you.
How about being able to do auction, you know what I'm talking about? Did I jump around too fast?
You said Senate Bill 86, the one that came from Minnehaha
I'm
County?
thinking, so that's what it says, subject.
Yeah,
It's the
so
90% appraisal repeal talking points.
Yep, that one came from Minnehaha.
Yeah,
They're having.
that seems
struggle.
like a good bill. If you got excess property, you want to get the best bang for your buck. Did you
Yep,
read through
it's-
that, Mark?
It's already cleared the Senate by unanimous vote. It's on to the House right now.
Wow, they did the work for us. The only other one, unless somebody got something else, is I was contacted on House Bill 1167, which is the revised certain provisions regarding the appointments of county commissioners to county planning commissions. And I think, I can't remember what, it's already went through the,
It was scheduled for hearing this morning in House Local Government.
yeah, for House
Go through?
Local.
I haven't heard yet. That was, I think, at 9 o'clock this morning, and they haven't updated the site yet, so I don't know what happened.
My thoughts on this, when I was contacted by the local area Black Hills Area Commission, and I talked to Holly a little bit. I talked to one of the sponsors, Taffy Howard, and when I first heard it, she was talking about it's giving local government their voice, taking the power from the legislature, and I kind of, at first glance, I thought, yeah, that's not too bad. Then I sat back and thought about it a little bit and talked to some other people, and I don't agree with that part because I think we need to take a stand on this because that's what she was looking for. I think the board needs to. My thoughts on this is for continuity, I think we need a commissioner on the planning commission. I think this board is going to change. I think the planning commission board is going to change. The makeups and things change, and I think we need a consistent continuity of that in place. I understand where she's coming from. It's all about the local power, your choice, but I think, like I said, when boards change, a lot of makeups change, but I think it should be consistent. And I guess I would look for a little more input from the board if that's the direction they'd like to do.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeSanto.
in this new bill, is it, it's changing one word, right?
Yep.
From shall to may?
Yep.
Or no, from may to shall?
Yeah.
Does it address at all whether or not the commissioner that attends the planning meetings has a vote or not?
I don't recall that. It's just
Bill's right
appointment.
here. It just says one member instead of shall may be a member of the Board of County Commissioners.
And you know, in
I believe the Planning Commission bylaws speak to the voting rights, Mr. DeSanto.
Guess I'm not getting the point.
Well, I guess my point is that if we're going to vote on it anyway, the Board of Commissioners is going to vote on anything that comes out of the Planning Committee. And so I almost think that we shouldn't have a vote in that as well. That we tilt the decision-making process by us having a vote as well. Maybe we should be there as observers and maybe to make suggestions, but not have a vote. Now, obviously, it's not on the bill, so that's not going to change right now anyhow, but that's my thought. And as far as whether or not we're there or not, I think that each individual commission, as we go through the years, should be able to make their own choice as to whether or not they appoint someone or not. I mean, my guess is, Lloyd, they're always going to. That's my thought anyway.
Lloyd, after you're done.
Ms. Hadcock, did you? I'll recognize Ms. Hadcock.
So once, you don't even have to vote and you can still change that decision, but since I've been watching, it's nice to be having a representative there from our board that's been watching what's happening at the planning level, and then inform us as commissioners on this board of what, they've seen and what they've heard. So you could change that either way just by not voting or voting. Right. I mean, you see what I'm saying? But I think it's a good idea that we have someone there. And again, I haven't seen them sway because of a commissioner. What I've seen them do is they really hash it out for us, the bottom line on a lot of stuff. And then by the time it gets to us, they do a good job at finding out a lot of the things that we would have asked anyway. And then we could still watch the meeting and then bring forth any other questions from there. So I see no problem with us having a member of the county commission on that board. I think it's a positive.
Ron, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to oppose the bill.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to oppose House Bill 1167. I do want to clarify something. I asked Farabee earlier about this, and I got to ask Mark about this. In the spirit of transparency, I remember seeing your wife on the sponsor of this bill. Is it going to create a conflict of interest for you?
Yes, it will. I'll recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Farabee, do you have anything you want to share?
All I see on that bill, whatever it is change the word from shall to may. What's wrong with that? Any county commission can still have whatever at least they can have the whole board, the whole commission being commissioners. Merely, as I understand it, just a change from shall to may. And I hear the expression over and over, local control. When Pierce says shall, local control's gone. It can't get much simpler. Shall from Pierre means you will. May means local control.
Thank you, Mr. Farabee. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
One no from Mr. Farabee.
One abstention.
Abstention. I thought you were
Oh,
gonna
that's right.
abstain.
I abstain. You're right.
Yeah, and one abstention from Mr. DeSanto. Ms. Hawley, anything? Am I missing anything?
Don't have any. Is there
I do.
other-
1180, the George Farabee bill.
11 what?
1180.
1180.
You have a bill, Mr. Farabee?
No comment.
I'll make a motion to oppose 1180.
Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, it's where if they don't, I guess if they don't like the county ordinance, only the people living in the in the rural areas get to vote on it. What else? Well, it's the same as Dan Richards' petition.
So you got a motion to oppose that one also?
I do.
I don't know. Could you check to see if Mr. Santos
Is Lynn on
is
that
sponsor
bill
on
as
that?
well?
HB 1180?
Lynn is a sponsor of that bill.
Okay. So, was there a second?
Yes.
Okay. There was a motion to oppose House Bill 1180 by Mr. Busker, seconded by Hadcock. Mr. DeSanto is going to be abstaining. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
1 no from Mr. Farabee, 1 abstention from Mr. DeSanto.
I'll make a motion to oppose the three bills that the treasurer has asked us to. I think she needs a better position probably than we are to know whether they're good or bad bills. That would be HB 1158, HB 1195, and SB 1.
Second.
Been moved by Ron Busker to support Janet's House Bill 1158, House Bill 1195, and SB 1, and seconded by Ms. Hadcock.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
discussion?
count Holly, is Lynn sponsoring any of those?
She's not an SB 1.
I know that.
1195.
I don't think she's on 1195 either.
I do not see her
1158
on-
would be the one that I would question.
Yeah, that'd probably be you.
Yes.
She on
On
it?
1158 she is.
Yeah,
You
we'll
want me to divide that up? I can divide them.
divide it up.
I would make a motion to oppose 1158, HB 1150, no, yeah, 1158,
Second Senate Bill 1.
and Senate Bill 1. No,
No, just.
yeah, no, I don't want Senate Bill 1 in
Start
there.
with 1158 and I'll.
Just
and I'll
1158.
abstain, and I'll abstain.
Okay, motion by Busker to oppose HB 1158, seconded by Hadcock. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Unanimous vote with 1 abstention from Mr. DeSanto. HB 11, go ahead.
Motion to oppose HB 1195 and SB 1 at the recommendation of the county audit treasurer.
Second.
Moved by Busker for HB 1195 and SB 1 for opposition, second by Hadcock. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Next, we have
Ron,
approval of voucher, oh, no,
can I
sorry.
ask one more? I'd like to ask Commissioner Busker about 1294. If that's one that the county to increase the tax on alcoholic beverages and distribute.
Can you describe it
1294?
better?
1294.
Can you describe it to us more?
I don't see it on my list.
I don't either.
Yeah, as far as I go,
Not on our list.
Oh, I'm sorry,
1236.
1294 was just added on Friday after I had printed the list. 1294 is an act to increase the tax on certain alcoholic beverages, distribute the revenue.
oh, yeah.
Malt beverages, 53 cents per gallon, wines and ciders, and then a new section hereby created in the state registry, the local government alcoholic beverage fund, and it to go back to the municipalities for treatment programs
Yeah.
and the costs.
Municipalities or the county?
I remember reading, I think it's to,
I would go down to the.
50% of all revenues deposited in the local government alcoholic beverage fund shall revert to the counties. 25% of it distributed to the county shall be equally divided among the counties. The remaining 75% shall be allocated by the ratio of the population of each county. Shall be deposited in the county's general fund, and somewhere I thought I read it had to be used for
prevention or treatment.
I'd agree with that.
Miss Holly?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Sandro.
Could you roll back to the first sentences as far as the amount of alcohol? Because it sounds to me like this is going to specifically affect a lot of new malt beverages, 53 cents per gallon. Oh, okay, or pro rata portion thereof. At first, it started sounding like it was basically going to only affect our microbreweries that are popping up all over the place, and I have a real problem with
Yeah, it says a tax imposed
putting
on
pressure on our
wholesalers,
small businesses.
manufacturers, artisan distillers.
Well, that's
Your
exactly
answer
what
to-
it is.
to
That is
me is-
exactly what it is. So
It's hard to figure out until you figure out how much money we're going to get or lose. I don't, the municipalities are going to collect 50% of the money based on their populations. The counties, on the other hand, are going to get 50% based on, well, half of that is based on how many counties there are, another half on population. Meaning, see, I'm against those things because we have 100,000 people. Harding County has 2,000 people, and half of the money is going to be the same to those two places. That's not fair. It's not right.
and it's
It should be based on population like the municipalities are.
Yep.
So what's your suggestion? No? Or just
I don't know. It's hard to tell how much money, if we're going to make money or lose money, but I guess, number one, it's not going to pass. We just got a share of the alcohol money a couple of years ago, and they're not going to give us more. I don't think. But
So we just let it run through committee and see what
I don't
happens.
know. I don't know if I'd oppose it. I'd say a neutral stance on it. I don't know.
We can see where it ends up on the 20th.
Or you can sit down this afternoon and figure out how much money we get and how much money we will get.
I can see if the
You can
association.
make- I don't know if you can get there.
I just know the county typically has always taken a position of support to get some of that
Yeah, I know
alcohol
it.
money. But if you're
I don't know if it's
concerned
any-
with the distribution,
And yeah, I don't know if it's any more, and I'm not sure about the distribution.
we do get the shaft end of the deal on those.
Mr. DeSanto.
And my concern primarily is the effect it'll have on our small businesses, our microbreweries, wineries, and that we're receiving a lot of revenue from here in the Black Hills especially.
It's probably geared toward them.
Statewide, too. Oh, it is. That says right in the first two paragraphs.
So what I'm gathering at this point in time, we probably don't want to take a stance at all.
You don't have
Till
to
we
do
do a little
anything.
more
I
review.
just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that was
Happening.
Thank you, Holly.
added after.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on any more bills?
Not.
Seeing none, we should move on to approval of the vouchers.
Motion to approve the vouchers?
Second.
Vouchers moved by Hadcock, seconded by Busker to approve vouchers, $457,275.48. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
1 no for Mr. Farabee and 4 yeas. Items from the public. Sam, got anything? Okay. Shannon, Michelle,
Move to go into
Everybody's
executive
good.
session?
motion been made to go into executive session, seconded by DeSanto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm
Nope,
sorry.
sorry, wait, before the vote.
Put the brakes on.
The motion really should be more specific, and I.
Oh, yes.
Do we only have?
Only contractual.
Or you mean, so the motion would be to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 sub 3 to discuss pending litigation matters.
Was that the motion maker's
Yes, sir.
friendly amendment and seconders? Seconders okay with that? Okay, all in favor and going to executive session indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I don't eat like this.
Okay, need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by DeSanto, seconded by Hadcock to come out of executive session. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I think, do we need to take one off the table first, or you will?
No, let's vote on this one first.
Move from the table.
Uh,
Item, I think, what item was that, guys?
18?
18. I'll take from the table. We tabled it again.
I tabled it. I'd make a motion to take 18 off of the table.
I think Ms. Hadcock made the motion.
Second. That's good. That's okay.
Second.
She made the seconded by DeSanto to take item 18 off the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 18, request for approval of a building permit outside county subdivision regulations. Chadwick Howie. This was Commissioner DeSanto's item.
Just an update.
BJ.
Just an update for the board. Shadrack was unable to make it today. When I texted him earlier in the meeting, he did say that his father is able to stand in for him as he's his power of attorney. So Shadrack okayed for him to speak. I know it came up before during discussion with this item.
Mr. Howie, it was discussed earlier that at least we should have a representative here in case there was any questions. Okay, thank you. Do we have any motions on this? Any discussion? That'd be the first part. Does anybody have any discussion on this item?
So what was the motion, Michelle, on this?
No, nobody made a
no,
motion.
nobody
I'm
made-
going to make a
but-
motion
I
right
mean,
now.
not motion, but.
This is a request for approval of a building
How the motion
permit
should be.
outside the county subdivision regulation.
I would move for approval of this one permit on Lot 3B.
Second.
Motion's been made for approval on lot 3B1, the one approval, right? That's how you worded it.
Correct, one.
And the second maker.
Building permit on Lot 3B.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Howie.
I would, no, do you want to talk? I was asking the board if they had anything to question about, but none. Do you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Gordon Howie. Just a point of clarification, there was a little confusion about which lot this pre-sold was on earlier on. Are we on the right lot now?
We've always been on 3B. We have.
I think the last time I was here, there was some
Yeah,
discussion.
there was.
And I
was assuming Mark got it right this time.
well, I don't think it was Mark that got it wrong before, but
Wow.
if all three of those lots are nearly identical, would it be appropriate to ask for a motion to, just so we don't have to go through this? It's been like the permit application was July 11th of last year. And I'd sure like to get this done today. Can we just get an approval on one lot?
Well,
without specifically saying which lot, or do I need to?
I'll kind of address that.
Okay.
Howie.
Okay.
At this point, from the feeling that I'm getting from the commission is just this one for right now. I think there's more discussion that needs to be come forward, but the motion that was made on the floor right now and seconded was for that one, or 3B. So I understand your frustration.
Mr. Chair,
Of Mr. DeSanto.
I believe correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Howie, what you're asking for is that to avoid confusion, you got a lot sold, right? You think.
We hope we do now, but.
And you're worried that this particular lot we're approving is not the lot.
They're just based on our conversation the last time I was here, there was a little confusion about that. And so that's why I mentioned it. Just don't want to further have it be problematic.
PJ,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a substitute motion.
you have a picture
You've not been identified yet.
Hold on.
I believe a lot of these items are in your packet, but every document we have signed by Shadrack, and I'm looking for the email he sent me. Can I bring this up?
Sure. 3B is what he has for legal descriptions, 3B, is that what your motion was?
And the handwritten application from Shadrick is behind that, where he wrote also 3B. I did send an email to your son, to Shadrick, confirming it was 3B, and that's what I'm looking for. And he confirmed that last time there was some concern.
Substitute motion, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
hold on here, let's finish this discussion before I throw something out. Does anybody have any further discussions on that lot 3B? Looks like we're clarified. Okay, Mr. Farabee.
I move that we allow Mr. Shadrach Howie to build on one of the 3 lots in question. One and only one of the 3 lots in question.
I'll second that for discussion. And Mr. Chair.
Okay, there's been a substitute motion by Mr. Farabee to allow Mr. Shadrach Howie to build on one of the 3 lots. You're not specific.
In question.
And it was seconded. And now Ms. Hadcock would like.
Chairman, well, the building permit is for 3B?
Correct.
Okay, so you can't just, you have to apply for another building permit on other 2. So you want to stick to 3B if you got a building permit on it already?
That's probably correct.
Okay, sir.
Okay, then let's just,
You withdrawing your second?
yeah, I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so now we're at the no second, Mr. Farabee.
Original.
Going once?
Well, I'm not going to withdraw, but
Okay, I'm just looking for another second. Don't see one? Moving on.
okay, fine.
Back to the original motion, which was the approval of the 3B, building permit for 3B, outside county subdivision regulation for Chatham County. It has been moved and seconded. I believe it was moved by DeSanto, seconded by Hadcock on the original motion. Any further discussion?
If we get tangled up,
Mr. Farabee.
if we get tangled up on what brand's on that cow, then what we gonna do? No. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Unanimous vote for approval. Next, we have items from, Miss Michelle.
I'll make a motion to direct the state's attorney's office to appeal to the Supreme Court the decision in Post 22 versus Pennington County.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to appeal Post 22's decision. Moved by Busker, seconded by DeSanto. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
What was that last? Motion to adjourn?
What, last one?
Yes.
Was to.
what?
Michelle.
Make sure I have it right.
Michelle will help you.
It was a motion to appeal the Post 22 decision.
Circuit Court's decision.
Commissioner Busker's motion, but motion to appeal the circuit court's, appeal to the Supreme Court, the circuit court's decision in Post 22 versus Pennington County.
Thank you. That was.
Okay.
Okay, there was motion to adjourn by who?
Adcock?
Adcock, second by Busker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, gentlemen.